The manga begins with an alchemist despised by both the Empire and his father, the Duke. But despite it all, he's determined to use his talent to create an item to change the world. Inside the House of Regis, the Duke informs his son, Thor Regis, that the Empire of Bulgaria is sending him to another country as a hostage. The teen is shocked, but his father only says that he needs to leave as he's no longer wanted. Despite meeting him for the first time in 3 years, these words are what Thor hears from Duke Regis, and his alarm is apparent when the boy asks why he should be a hostage for another country. His father simply replies, "It's because he's useless," leaving him dumbfounded while the guards and servants around him dare to laugh. Thor grimly thinks he should have cut off his relationship with the Duke's family, and he recalls how when he was only 13, he left home to find a job, never intending to return and just live life as a commoner. 3 years later, soldiers who work for the Duke force him to return, and now Thor is being told by his father that just because he doesn't have combat skills, he isn't needed anymore. After summoning the captain of the guard, the Duke has him talk about his son's appraisal, and so the captain maliciously informs everyone that, according to Thor's results, he doesn't have any combat skill, which is a serious flaw in the eldest son of the Duke's family. The butler speaks up, revealing that on his second appraisal, Thor still doesn't have any attack skill, though he does have one basic magic skill, which is still a disappointment. Amidst the cruel words coming from the servants, the Duke states he had high expectations of his son, especially since their family has a wealth of ancestral combat skills, and he continues raging on and on that Thor is useless. The teen, who has fallen silent, muses he shouldn't have been surprised to get this kind of treatment as someone who doesn't have any combat skills, as the Bulgarian Empire had been expanding its territory by force, and its first emperor was a skilled fighter. Both aristocrats and commoners attached great importance to their fighting abilities. Normally, aristocrats are born with excellent combat skills, so it's no surprise that those who aren't so fortunate are looked down upon. Finally, Thor speaks up, revealing that though he can't fight, he does have the skill of alchemy, which would be quite useful for mending and repairing items. The younger Regis is confident in his skill in making new items and plans to someday open his own workshop, but it only makes his father break a table in rage. While Thor is stunned by his father's over-the-top reaction, the man yells that the Empire already has the sacred swords and shields used by the heroes, so it's pointless for his useless son to make more when they already have the strongest of weapons. The Duke is adamant about his decision. Thor is to be sent as a hostage, and the young Regis has no other choice but to comply, as his father isn't willing to hear him out. At the very least, the man reveals that Thor will be going to a dangerous place where all the hostages sent by the Empire have gone missing, which prompts the teen to assume that he's being sent to the Demon King's territory. The Duke doesn't want to hear his son mention the name of the place, as he fears it greatly, while Thor is more concerned about knowing if there's an ongoing exchange between the Empire and the Demon Lord. The Duke explains that the Empire takes measures against the demons and demi-humans closest to the territory of the Demon King, who are said to be bloodthirsty, and to appease them, they offer a sacrifice once every few decades. A discussion on why demons eliminate humans starts, and Thor wonders if he's going to perish soon when his father states he wants him to hurry up and leave. Out of the blue, the teen is punched in the stomach, and after the Duke dismisses him, Thor seethes, conveying his hatred toward his father. However, the older man isn't bothered, simply stating he doesn't talk to dead men. Just like that, Thor is banished from the country where he was born and raised, imprisoned in a carriage that's heading toward the Demon King's territory. Hundreds of years ago, during the fight for the territory of Teikoku, the Demon King invaded the humans with his army. To fight back, the humans summon heroes from another world that could rival the demon's strength, and after a fierce battle, the brave soldiers drive the Demon King's army out of human territory. In the aftermath, it's decided that the south of Teikoku belongs to the humans, while the north belongs to the demons and demi-humans, and since then, there's been no major conflict between the two sides. Currently, Thor can't see anything beyond the walls of his carriage, but what he does know is that there are about 20 guards sent with him, so his chances of escaping aren't good. Once again, the teen laments his connection with the Duke, musing that he had once thought that he already escaped him. Years ago, after leaving his father's residence, Thor applied to a government office using his mother's name, and after being accepted, he'd been left in charge of organizing documents and repairing items. The position of a civilian official is looked down upon, as it's a job that someone who couldn't become an adventurer gets. But still, Thor liked his job because he was able to make use of his alchemy skills. Remembering the sword that he was in the middle of repairing, the teen thinks it's regretful that it was left unfinished. When he recalls his cruel father's words, Thor gets to work. After securing himself spoons used by soldiers during mealtimes, he uses his alchemy skill to melt it, before forming a knife from it. This is Thor's skill, being able to create new things or change an existing thing's material into something different, and with it, he plans to someday open his own alchemist shop. Determined, the teen thinks he can't give up, and just then, a guard outside announces that they're near the border of the Demon King's territory. Afterward, Thor is let out by the guards, and right in front of him, the road ends, signifying the end of the human world and the start of the dark forest, where beyond it is the Demon King's territory. When the young Regis asks the logistics of how he'll be handed to the demons, the guards don't answer, simply sending an arrow flying into the sky with a ribbon attached to it. Eventually, figures can be seen emerging from the forest, making the guards nervous. Thor stares, his eyes wide as demons show themselves, while one demi-human girl smirks. While the teen muses that it's his first time seeing a minotaur and a demi-human, the guards shake in fear, and after contemplating a bit, Thor steps forward and introduces himself, hoping to leave a good first impression. The demi-human welcomes him politely, introducing herself as Mabel Refrain, an elf who's come to pick the human up on behalf of the Demon King. The other demons fall to their knees, stunning the teen that they're quite polite, as if they're not about to pick up a hostage. Despite their propriety, the guards are still fearful, recalling how the elves could blow humans away with their magic, and how minotaurs could dispatch people with their strength. Disgusted by the guards' reactions, Thor resolves not to listen to the men and instead gives thanks and an apology to the demons, introducing himself to them formally. Mabel falls silent, making the teen nervous. But then, the elf exclaims happily that it's the first time she's met someone polite from the Dulgarian Empire. Stunned, Thor is then handed documents from a guard, who addresses him as a messenger instead of a sacrifice. After Mabel receives the documents from him and signs them, she announces that the delivery of the messenger is complete, and though the Minotaurs are completely friendly, the guards immediately make their leave. Thor sighs at how they're reacting, which prompts Mabel to ask if he's not afraid, but the teen reveals he actually is. However, the young Regis states it's rude to show his fear, as the humans and demons have a peace treaty. As they make their way deeper into the Demon King's territory, Thor can't help but notice how he's treated well by the demon, and compared to the soldiers of the Empire, the difference in kindness is astronomical. Also, Thor has noticed another thing. Even though the terrain is hard to tread, he actually feels better after entering the Demon King's territory. Somehow he feels a mysterious magical power filling his body, and all of a sudden he gains new skills while his existing skills evolve. Checking his status to be sure, Thor becomes stunned that his previous skill became creative alchemy, the highest alchemy skill achievable, and aside from that, he's gained material alchemy, which allows him to create substances from his own magical power. In addition, Thor also learned addition alchemy, which gives him the option of adding his desired attributes to a target substance, while appraisal grasp allows him to appraise the attributes, materials, and effects of an item. The teen has never heard of such skills before, and he ponders that perhaps this is the reason why he doesn't have any combat skills at all. He was simply developing his abilities in creative alchemy. Seeing that the human hasn't moved for a while, Mabel asks Thor if he's feeling all right, as one can get sick due to the magical power of their land. The alchemist only questions her in return about the strength of darkness in the territory of the Demon King, which the elf confirms is indeed strong. While Thor explains that light magic is rife in the human realm, as well as the magical power of fire and earth, he comes to a sudden realization, understanding now how his skills were awakened. It's because he absorbed darkness in the Demon King's territory, and to awaken creative alchemy, an alchemist needs to gain the magical power of 6 attributes: light darkness, earth, water, fire, and wind, all of which he now wields. During their trek, one of the Minotaurs reminds Mabel to be careful as the terrain is getting rough, but only a moment later she trips, and though Thor helps her in time, her pendant's chain breaks before the whole thing lands on the ground. While the Minotaur worries about it, Mabel assures him it's okay, that it's no one's fault, as even before, its chain is already cracked. Despite her words, the elf looks saddened by the state of her mother's pendant, so Thor offers to fix it, revealing he's already mended a broken chain several times before. Curious, Mabel asks him if he's a craftsman, and for a moment the teen hesitates, as back in the Bulgarian Empire, he wasn't allowed to call himself an alchemist. All he did was repair stuff, and his long dream of an alchemy workshop was never realized. However, he now has a chance to do what he wants, so he calls himself an alchemist, much to Mabel and the Minotaur's shock. The elf asks if it's all right for her to ask him to fix her pendant as she isn't human, but Thor assures her race doesn't matter. After he receives it from her, the young Regis discovers through his appraisal grasp that the pendant has a water attribute, and he decides to simply replace the metal chain, using his material alchemy skill. After a bit of effort, the repair is done, and the result wows the Minotaurs, as they think that the pendant looks prettier than before. Thor is surprised too at his new capabilities, before he hands the pendant to Mabel, instructing her to have a professional craftsman to look at it later. For a moment, the elf is at a loss for words, before she profusely thanks him for fixing her keepsake of her mother. Their positive reactions toward his skills surprise Thor, as it's the first time someone has ever appreciated them. Back at the Empire, he's constantly mocked, while his father thinks he's just useless, so it's no surprise that Mabel's gratefulness makes the alchemist tear up, and he's glad now that he got to come there. Just then, he remembers the alchemist in the history books who lived before the heroic era, and Thor wonders if perhaps that man also just wanted to make items, hoping that the people would be pleased with his creations. Mabel tells the teen to address her familiarly, which he's glad to do, and this is how Thor begins his new life as an alchemist. Later, the young Regis rides the carriage with Mabel, allowing him to enjoy the sights from his window. In the distance, he sees ships on a big river, and he becomes fascinated when he realizes that fishermen are operating them. Thor continues to observe, and he comments to his companion that there really are different kinds of demons and demi-humans. In the Bulgarian Empire, the Demon King's territory was said to be a chaotic place, where a demon beast would either attack or kidnap whoever wanders into it. However, based on what Thor is seeing, everyone lives normal lives there, and it's calmer than in the Empire. Mabel reveals that their population has to work hard, as there are not that many of them, and she wishes for Thor to find a good job in the Demon King's territory. The teen, who's been expecting that he'll be a hostage, is a bit surprised, and he wonders what happened to all those who were sent before him. Mabel reveals that their last messenger was sent 50 years ago, and since the elf wasn't born yet at that time, she only heard of him. The demi-human thinks that perhaps the last messengers went home secretly, as all of them turned out missing. A scenario that Thor thinks is plausible. After all, even though the citizens of the Demon King's territory welcome the messengers, they still want to escape, having the impression that they're hostages, and in the end, they go missing. At the thought of Thor leaving, Mabel becomes sad, convinced that there's no alchemist like him in their home, and she begs the teen to stay with them, promising to help Thor live his life comfortably. Her words make the alchemist smile, who then assures her that he came to make sure that there's peace between the Empire and the Demon King's territory, even though the truth is that he did plan to escape. However, Thor realizes that his freedom isn't being restricted at all, so there's no point in leaving. Besides, the teen quite likes Mabel, as it's thanks to her that he's able to work as an alchemist. The young Regis declares that he'll do what he can while he's living in their home, which brightens up the elf, who again thanks him sincerely. Excitedly, she informs him that they'll be arriving soon at the Demon Castle, and that Thor should prepare himself to have an audience with the Demon King. Despite his earlier confidence, the alchemist can't help but become apprehensive as he must get into the king's good graces if he's to live peacefully there. And while Mabel and the Minotaurs are welcoming, the Demon King might not be the same. Finally, having arrived at the castle, Thor is then led inside, where he then kneels to pay respects to the king. His nervousness amuses Mabel, and finally the king makes his appearance. He looks imposing as he asks the teen if he's the guest from the Empire, before revealing that his name is Rookie Evergard, the current Demon King. After Thor politely greets him and introduces himself, Rookie gets straight to the point and asks the human what he can do for him. As the teen is dispatched by the Empire, the Demon King assumes that he must have some useful knowledge or skills, and Thor admits that he does know a little alchemy. As he isn't being treated as a hostage, but rather a guest, the young Regis muses that he wants to negotiate as there's a chance that he'll be hired as an alchemist, and his words do interest Rookie. Prime Minister Curve speaks up, stating that alchemy is a practice not found in the Demon King's territory, and he's taken aback that the Empire has a surplus of alchemists, that they're willing to send one to them. Thor keeps quiet about the fact that Dulgaria actually finds his skill unnecessary, and thankfully, Rookie offers to hire him as an alchemist. When the Demon King asks what he needs for work, the young Regis replies he needs a room near the workshop and also some equipment. While inside, he's shocked that the Demon King easily accepts his skills and is even willing to provide for him. Rookie asks Thor if it's okay for them to use his finished products, to which the alchemist says yes, but he does have a question. The teen asks the Demon King the reason why he's being accommodating to him when Thor is just a stranger from the Empire. Rookie falls silent before stating it's for them to learn, as demons have once been defeated by human wisdom and heroes from another world. Hundreds of years ago, during the war between humans and demons, the humans summoned heroes from another world to deal with their enemies. One hero was so powerful and determined to fight that he drove the demons to fear, and his obsession with strength spread to the other humans living in their world, influencing the Empire to believe that power is everything. When the hero finally defeated the Demon King at that time, the demons were exiled to the north, shaping their world into what it is now. Afterward, the satisfied hero returned to his original world, and the hero summoning falls out of practice, though the knowledge and items of the heroes remain in the present. Thor points out that all those happened 200 years ago, but the Demon King says it doesn't matter how long it's been, as they've decided to learn and admit that they were defeated by humans. Rookie says he doesn't intend for there to be more fights, but he does have to continue learning from humans, determined to not let those who died in battle die in vain. Thor senses that the Demon King is being truthful, and he listens to the latter's explanation about why they continue to invite guests from the Empire. The demons need to catch up with humans, and because of that, Rookie is willing to help Thor flourish as an alchemist. The young Regis is exhilarated, having just been given free rein to do what he wants, and in return, he wants to create an amazing item for them. Determined, the teen states he'll show them what he can achieve with his alchemy, which the Demon King is looking forward to. After Thor is dismissed, so he can take a rest from his long journey, Rookie addresses his subjects, about to announce something important. Once he has everyone's attention, the Demon King states it's about their new guest from the Empire, Thor. He reminds them that they're not to harm the alchemist, and the Demon King wants everyone to treat the young Regis with respect and learn as much as they can from him. The elf magic commander speaks up, saying he doesn't object to Rookie's words, but he wonders what there is to learn from the human. The other commanders get nervous, but the elf barrels on, grinning as he suggests that they should remind their guest of their power and how fearsome the demons are. Contrary to his expectations, the elf commander observes a menacing aura coming from Rookie, making him nervous. The Demon King considers his words, sighing before he yells at him in reproach that he can't overlook such words, as it's what caused their race to almost go extinct in the past. Their leader reminds them that humans are plenty, and some of them are very powerful, and at that moment, the Empire still keeps expanding its territories and growing its power. In the face of the Demon King's wrath, the elf commander prostrates himself, asking for forgiveness, while Rookie reminds them once again that Thor is their guest. To diffuse the tension, Curvy states that everyone is cautious about what the alchemist is going to do, and in response, the Demon King assigns Mabel to watch over Thor and be his caretaker. When Curve notices the girl's fixed pendant, Rookie becomes curious about it, and as she confirms that Thor created the chain out of his own magic earlier, the Prime Minister volunteers to use his skill to appraise it. After a few moments, he becomes stunned, and after some questioning from him, Mabel reveals that the pendant, which has been passed down to her family for generations, has already lost its power. Curve reveals that the magic stone in the pendant is fixed, restoring all of the necklace's power, much to Mabel and everyone else's shock. The Prime Minister informs everyone that, currently, the Water Spirit Stone can't be fixed in the Demon King's territory with its existing technology, but Thor has managed to truly repair it. Mabel can hardly believe her ears as Curve continues to talk, explaining that there are two things they can conclude from their guest's arrival. First, the possibility of an alchemist that can repair magic items exist, and second, the Empire has many alchemists of the same caliber that sending Thor as a messenger to the demons isn't a loss to them. Rookie is alarmed, thinking his suspicions earlier are probably right, while Curve states that they can also take Ragus's arrival as a form of threat by the Empire, conveying that resistance against them would be futile, making everybody nervous. The Prime Minister explores the possibility that perhaps the Empire is foolish enough to not understand the alchemist's worth and throw him away, but it's a scenario that doesn't make sense to the Demon King, who's quite cautious of humans. Curve promises to exercise more caution when it comes to humans, before continuing to discuss the alchemist's workshop. Later, when the meeting is over, Mabel becomes a bit worried, as Thor has been waiting for a while already. But when she finds him, the alchemist is beside himself with excitement as he examines the materials that the things in the room are made from. His curiosity and optimism calm Mabel, who muses she is worried for nothing, and the elf tells him that first, they need to get his lodging sorted out. Upon stepping out of the room, they're greeted by two lizard men, who claim they'll be guarding Thor as instructed to them by the Prime Minister. Mabel again worries, as though the guards don't have any weapons, their claws are deadly, and the human is sure to be powerless against them. The elf expects the alchemist to be uncomfortable, but Thor simply greets them, not the least bit bothered. Flustered, he tells Mabel that there's so much for him to learn, and just now he gets so surprised as it's his first time meeting a lizard man. The elf notes how the human doesn't call the lizard men disparaging names, as others of his race are wont to do, and instead of being bothered by their strength, the alchemist is much more curious about how their scales must probably get stuck in their clothes when they change. Thor excitedly declares that he'll invent a cloth so smooth that they won't have that problem anymore. Stunning both Mabel and the lizard men, the young Regis chuckles, stating his interest in discovering how the demons of different races live their lives, as each race is bound to have its own unique problems. Thor is determined to improve the current technology of the Demon King's territory by solving problems, and ultimately, he dreams of making an item that can change the world. Mabel is stunned at how grateful the human is for being hired as an alchemist, and she can't even detect a lie anywhere in Thor's words. Just by looking into his eyes, the elf realizes that he doesn't care about the differences between humans and demons, and it makes her think that she wants to see him achieve his endeavors. Mabel promises to help Thor in any way he can, and after he conveys the same sentiment in return, the elf wonders if she's become the caretaker of the person who will change the history of the demons in the near future. That night, Mabel dreams of cruel words about how she's an elf who can't wield magic, about how she's got dirty human blood in her veins, and about how she's just useless and disgusting. When she wakes up, there are tears in her eyes, and the elf realizes she had another dream from her childhood, making her wonder when she'll be able to get over her past. Just then, Mabel feels pain in her feet, as like always, they're cold as ice. Along with her trauma, the elf wishes to conquer her sensitivity toward coldness, as the elf thinks it's quite embarrassing to wear her thick socks when she meets Thor later. Meanwhile, the alchemist is excited and amazed as he observes everything inside the Demon King's castle's storehouse, noting the broken weaponry and equipment just lying about. He yells in enthusiasm before he reminds himself of his situation. The Demon King didn't lend him that room out of kindness. It's merely an early investment in anticipation of his usefulness to the demon. And if Thor doesn't meet his expectations, then it'll be all taken away from him. For that not to happen, he's determined to make something that pleases everyone, including the Demon King. Despite it all, the alchemist can't contain his happiness, as he flutters around the room, examining objects that he can use as materials. During his perusal, Thor finds a strange book, and after taking a look inside, he realizes it's something left behind by the heroes from another world. The alchemist finds this discovery amazing, and initially, he can't read the text at first. But when his appraisal skill comes into play, Thor suddenly understands the contents of the book. After studying it a bit, the young Regis realizes it's an e-commerce catalog, a collection of good deal items only to be delivered within Japan, which is a country he thinks that one of the previously summoned heroes comes from. Thor is stunned at seeing how many healthy goods and healing items are in the collection, and he concludes that this could very well be the reason why the heroes are so strong. The alchemist is musing that perhaps he can recreate some of the items in the catalog when Mabel arrives with tea, making him jump in surprise. Seeing that he's very concentrated on a book, the elf becomes curious. But she can't read it at all, and Mabel reveals that stuff like the book is kept in the storehouse as the Demon King generations ago was horrible at keeping his room clean. She's offering Thor some tea when he notices her thick socks, prompting her to reveal that she's a bit sensitive to the cold. The elf has been told by the doctors that this is due to the not-so-good flow of mana within her body, and because of this poor circulation, Mabel has been unable to use her magic, though the fact her grandmother is human might have something to do with it as well. The elf recalls how she's been ostracized because of this, but thankfully, Mabel is good at cleaning, so the Demon King took her in. Thor tears up much to his surprise, and after recalling their first meeting, the elf admits that she had an interest in the race to which her grandmother belonged. That's why Mabel volunteered to get Thor, and she's quite grateful that he's the first human she met, as he's very kind, like her grandmother. The young Regis is amazed that the Demon King took in other people regularly from other countries aside from him, letting them find work where they can use their skills. Getting an idea, Thor asks Mabel to accompany him for a moment, as there's something he wants to do. After considering the 2 shields he found in the storehouse, the alchemist thinks of using them to create a recovery item for people who are sensitive to the cold, and after reading the page closely, he gleans that it's called a foot bath. According to the catalog, the item's strong water currents will keep the feet warm, improving the body's blood flow and stimulating the feet's acupuncture points. After a bit of pondering, Thor sets out to soften the shields and extract their magic stones before turning the remaining scraps of metal into materials for the foot bath. Just then, Mabel arrives with the fresh tub that he requested, which he thanks her for, and soon, Thor gets to work. He activates his skill over alchemy, and after using the foot bath in the catalog as a reference and refining the available materials, the teen pictures in his mind how he wants the items to work. Eventually, the process is complete, and it's a total success. His appraisal skill confirms that it's indeed a foot bath with functions almost the same as the one in the catalog. Immediately, Thor hands the item to Mabel to help her with her cold feet, and the elf is stunned at how he finished making the item in less than 10 minutes, making her wonder if the other alchemists in the Empire are as skilled as him. Thor truthfully tells her he doesn't know as he hasn't met other alchemists, but based on his father's words, perhaps there are a bunch out there just like him. As Mabel feels overwhelmed at that possibility, the alchemist tells her it isn't really a big deal, as all he did was make a copy from an item from the hero's world, and he wants her to have it. The elf is flustered, but Thor is only excited for her to try it out, saying he'll teach her how to operate it. Just as Thor is about to demonstrate how the foot bath works, a curious curve shows up, wanting to observe the thing he came up with. Finding no issue with his presence, the alchemist pours water into the foot bath and activates the fire magic stone to heat the water. He then instructs Mabel to put her feet in, and after she does so, she marvels at how warm the water is. After following Thor's instruction to pour mana into the wind magic stone, the elf startles, becoming overwhelmed at the sensation she's suddenly feeling. While the alchemist observes that what Mabel is feeling is probably the effect of the magic stones, the elf is feeling as if she's being brought to heaven, and inside her, a change is happening. When she recovers, Curve asks if she's feeling all right, to which she says she is, before revealing that mana in her body has started circulating properly. The Prime Minister is stunned, asking Thor if what he made really was from the hero's healthy goods, which the teen confirms. Curve says there are no records that the heroes use such things, and he wonders how it has an influence on Mabel's mana when all it supposedly does is heal fatigue. Thor reasons that it's due to it being a hero's item that it generates such an effect, as after all, heroes did have immense mana and impressive skills. Curve is baffled, and he becomes terribly disappointed that nothing and no one in the Demon King's territory had ever fixed Mabel's mana circulation until that particular hero's item came. Thor thinks that the Prime Minister's shock is understandable, and there's no way that he's recreating just one item, as something like this isn't enough to satisfy his curiosity to make more. After Mabel finishes using the foot bath, the elf declares that she's feeling refreshed now that her mana flow is finally working. However, when she's asked to demonstrate her magic, the girl hesitates, remembering her trauma. Still, Mabel pushes herself, thinking it's different now as she's been fixed by Thor's creation, so she raises her hand and unleashes dark wind. Curve is shocked at how strong the gusts of wind she produced, and when Mabel is done, the elf tears up at how she's finally able to wield magic. She's always been affected when her people called her useless before, and now Mabel can't help but hug Thor out of sheer relief and gratefulness. Finally, the elf can now be more useful to the Demon King, and because of this, she deems the alchemist her savior. When Curve suggests that Mabel soon release Thor from her fierce hug, she quickly releases him, allowing the young Regis to breathe again. Seeing her so happy makes the teen glad as well, and he's about to say that she can keep it, when Curve interrupts, saying the item is going to be under the management of the Demon King's territory, as it's something that can awaken an individual's magic from within, which can be dangerous if it falls on the wrong hands. When Thor says it is supposed to be an item Mabel can use, Curve agrees to let Mabel use it whenever she wants to. But still, the alchemist needs to hand the item over to the Prime Minister. In exchange, Curve says they'll pay Thor for it, surprising the alchemist, who never thought that it'd be possible for someone to pay him for the items he wanted to make. The treatment the young Regis is currently getting for his skills is far different from what he got at the Empire, and he says that if he's going to be rewarded, it wouldn't be with money, but rather magic stones that he can use for his work. Curve falls silent, asking Thor if he really has no qualms about his items being used in the Demon King's territory by people who aren't humans. But the alchemist doesn't mind at all. The young Regis wants lots of different people to use his items and hear their impressions, and someday, he aims to create items that will surpass what heroes used in the past. Mabel smiles at his impassioned speech, while Curve falls silent, before stating he'll negotiate with the Demon King. Predictably, the Demon King is stunned to hear that Mabel can use magic just because she used an item that Thor made, but Curve assures him that it truly happened, as he witnessed the whole thing himself. Still, Rookie is in disbelief, since the elf's magic ailment couldn't be healed by the many healers who've examined her in the past, and in less than a day, the alchemist was able to pull it off. Curve reveals that Thor used two kinds of magic to heal Mabel, the fire mana for the heat, while the wind mana was used for circulation, and together they got rid of her cold sensitivity and fixed her mana flow. The Demon King calls Thor a fearsome man for having such an insight, while Curve is convinced that Thor's alchemy skills are rare, especially since in the scriptures, there's no record for the hero's healthy good to have any sort of buffs. The Prime Minister knows of strengthening and healing magic, as it's all in the records, but he never heard of an item that could improve mana circulation, which makes him lose confidence as the Prime Minister, who has the duty of passing down their history. The Demon King admits that he doesn't quite understand what's happening either, but he instructs Curve to hand over the footbath to Mabel, as he doesn't want to take away what's beneficial to her. When the Prime Minister muses about how Mabel has come to quickly trust Thor, he notes that it's quite strange for it to happen to a human, especially since it took a while for them to gain the elf's trust after what happened to her in the village. In light of that, Curve has a proposal for the Demon King. If Mabel wishes to, then she should marry Thor, so he'll have a reason to stay in their territory. However, the king would have none of it, and to his subordinate's shock, he adamantly yells that he'll not have Mabel be deceived by a human. Curve tries to calm him down, but Rookie insists that he can't just sit around anymore, determined to judge the alchemist's character himself. Meanwhile, back in the Empire, the Duke is satisfied that his son will perish in such a fitting way for someone who's untalented, and an embarrassment to him. While their master drinks in celebration, the head of the guard informs the butler that there's an inquiry from the imperial court about the reparation regarding a magic sword, which the queen will be using. Finally remembering the request, the butler agrees to take care of it, but later, he becomes upset upon hearing from the alchemist that the workshops refuse to work on the sword. The civilian official reveals that it's actually one of their employees who is fixing it, but since he's retired now, there's nothing they can do. When the Regis butler demands for that employee to be summoned anyway, the official tells him the employee's name is Thor Kana, but since he's returned to the Duke's household, his name should be now Thor Regis. The butler is stunned, becoming frustrated at his current situation, but still, he's determined for the Duke's household to be the one who'll directly repair the sword. The next day, the butler drops by the #1 alchemist shop in the Empire, but still, he's told that the work is out of their league, much to his frustration. The shop owner reveals that repairing a magic sword isn't easy, as it needs to be endowed with attributes such as fire and earth, and it's where an alchemist's skill will come into play. However, presently, nobody has skills like that anymore, as during the hero's time, their prestige plummeted and their numbers declined. When the butler hears that there's actually someone who worked on the sword before, the shop owner becomes stunned, admiring the skillful effort that was poured into it, and he begs the butler to introduce him to the brilliant alchemist that he was talking about. The Regis butler doesn't answer, as after all, Thor has been already sent away as a sacrifice. Instead, he demands that the shop owner take over the job of fixing the sword, stating that since it'll only be used for rituals anyway, there's no need for it to return to its former strength. The shop owner sighs and requires the butler to sign a document that states he only wants to make the sword look good, as he doesn't want their shop to take any blame if a problem arises, and without much choice, the Regis butler agrees. Back in the Demon King's castle, Mabel dotes on Thor, spoon-feeding him his meal, to show her gratitude as he not only fixed her pendant, but also made it possible for the elf to do magic. When the alchemist asks her if he can ask for another room, Mabel answers it's possible, though it'll take a while as nearby rooms are currently occupied. Thor muses that the Demon King was planning to turn the treasury room into a workshop, but since there are a lot of valuables there, like books, the alchemist wants a separate manufacturing room to avoid causing irreparable damage. Since it isn't possible to gain one at the moment, the young Regis suggests that Mabel show him around the castle, which she agrees to enthusiastically. When the elf leaves for a moment to clean up the dishes, Thor is left wondering how to deal with his lack of a manufacturing room at the moment, and while he consults the e-commerce catalog, he's reminded of the hero's storage box, which allows them to carry large amounts of items that wouldn't amount to ant luggage. The teen wants to create something similar to it, and after pursuing the book, he finds an item called the iconic White Rabbit small-sized storage room. Its outrageous description that another dimension exists inside it stuns Thor, making him recall how the hero's storage box was a direct separate space where they could insert things into as much as they wanted. Determined, the young Regis tells himself it doesn't hurt to try, so he then activates over alchemy. However, he doesn't meet the necessary conditions to create it, as he doesn't have much dark mana, having not yet been exposed to it much. Disappointed, Thor is just wondering if there's someone around who has lots of dark mana, when his skill informs him that he just absorbed enough dark mana for the item to be created. The alchemist is confused, but his thoughts are soon interrupted by the Demon King, who states he wants to have a chat with him. Thor immediately kneels, and he can't help but observe how the Demon King is full of dignity, decked as he is with magic items that are quite powerful. The imposing demon starts by thanking the alchemist for letting Mabel use magic again, revealing she's like a childhood friend to him, and it makes Rookie glad that the elf's worries are now resolved. Honored, Thor exclaims he was glad to do it, as Mabel has always looked out for him, but his reaction makes the Demon King comment that he's strange. As he's confused, the demon explains that in the past, he witnessed the messengers that were sent by the Empire, and often, they were afraid of the demon, immediately wanting to return home. Meanwhile, Thor is completely calm, which Rookie finds interesting, and it makes him think whether the alchemist is planning something or not. When the young Regis reveals he does have something in mind, the Demon King becomes alarmed, but Thor only shows him the catalog, saying he wants to make a small-sized storage room so he can then turn it into a workshop. Rookie repeats that the alchemist really is weird, and he wants to ask the human about what he said before regarding his goal to create things that would surpass heroes' weapons. The demon asks him if he's being serious, especially since the heroes came from a world more advanced than theirs. But that fact doesn't bother the alchemist at all, saying he only still wants to create their items so that they might be able to understand how the heroes' technology works. Once again, Thor becomes excited, as he tells Rookie that someday he'll make his own shop, and his items will be used everywhere in the Demon King's territory. When he senses menace coming from the demon, the alchemist finally realizes he should stop talking, but in the next moment, the Demon King only laughs, finding the human truly interesting. Rookie allows Regis to try achieving his goals because if he really is capable of all that he says, the Demon King will have to just accept his ambition. Touched, Thor then declares they should start making his storage room, flustering the demon as he didn't expect that they'd do all the building now. Once the softened chunks of metal are prepared, with enough dark mana he's accumulated from the Demon King, the alchemist starts creating his dream storage room. While Thor is busy, Rookie asks Mabel if the human is really serious about creating the item right then and there, and the elf responds that there's no stopping the alchemist when he becomes like this. Mabel tells the Demon King that Thor is someone who understands the demons, revealing that when the young Regis met his guards, he immediately intended to create a smooth cloth for the lizard men. The elf believes that Thor is a person who's able to see the true nature of things without prejudice, and Mabel assures her master that he can believe in Thor as well. At the same time, the alchemist is busy forming his new storage room, and after a bit of effort, he succeeds in obtaining it, though he muses that it's still nowhere near like the one that the heroes had. Mabel is in awe, while the Demon King is reluctantly impressed, though he says the small thing won't be able to turn into a workshop. However, the alchemist corrects him, revealing that inside it is an unlimited amount of space. Wanting to see the inside, both Thor and Mabel bid goodbye to the Demon King before opening the door. Inside the item is a large room, stunning the pair who ventured inside, and immediately Mabel runs around the place, feeling like there's no end to where she can go. The elf is impressed with the technology that the heroes have and becomes excited that Thor wants to surpass them, but the alchemist admits that he still has a long way to go to achieve that. His storage room is still limited, unlike the heroes, but already he's thinking of ways that they can utilize this item. Thor asks Mabel if she's willing to test them for him when he makes more of it someday, which flusters the elf, but she eventually agrees. Their moment is interrupted when the Demon Lord hollers for Thor to tell him what's going on, and when he hears from them that it's safe, Rookie makes his way inside. The fearsome demon admits his creation is amazing, and while he looks around suddenly, the storage box announces that items of SS rarity have been detected and will automatically be stored in the box. Glitters surround the Demon King, and in the next moment, his obstructing robe and mask of recognition come off, revealing the visage of a young and sophisticated girl. Thor is stunned as he stares at the true identity of the Demon King Rookie, while she starts to panic. The Demon King crosses her arms and reluctantly says she forgives Thor as he kneels on the floor, reflecting that it's his fault that her disguise was taken away, as he had forgotten that the storage box has an auto-sorting feature. Earlier, when her true face was exposed, Rookie was so flustered while Mabel panicked, running around her. The whole time, Thor was apologizing while explaining the situation until finally all of them calmed down. Thankfully, she forgives him, revealing that aside from Mabel, Curve, the Demon King's family and maids are the only ones who know her face. Rookie explains that her true appearance will discredit her ability to lead, so she took the Prime Minister's advice and used rare items to make her look like a demon lord. When Mabel tries to explain that Rookie already has powers befitting a ruler, only that her body's growth is quite slow, the smaller girl tells her childhood friend that she doesn't need to comfort her. Instead, the Demon King wants to hear the opinion of what Thor thinks of her appearance, and for a moment he hesitates before deciding to speak up. He answers that it's as if he has witnessed the beauty of a deity's form, stunning Rookie, adding that when he saw her appearance, it was like he had to reevaluate his own worth. As an alchemist, after seeing the Demon Lord's beauty, he became ashamed at his lack of skill, as the functional beauty of his created items don't even compare. Immediately, Rookie blushes in embarrassment, while Thor says he only said what he was thinking. Angered, the Demon Lord accuses the alchemist of not knowing anything about what it feels like to hide behind a living mask, which renders the teen silent before revealing that he's also been lying. Thor tells them the truth. He isn't a guest, but rather a sacrifice sent into the Demon King's territory by the Empire. The girls are shocked, as the young Regis reveals how his own father thinks he's nothing but a shame to the Duke's household, preferring for his son to perish than tarnish their family's reputation. Thor even tells them how in the Empire, strength is everything, so he who has no combat ability is named worthless, while his skill in alchemy is not at all held in such high esteem, unlike what they have thought previously. However, ever since the young Regis arrived at the Demon King's territory, he thinks of himself as lucky, as finally he's able to work as an alchemist, and experience the joy of making items that he likes. Mabel is dismayed, and she asks if Thor is telling the truth, her heart hurting at the awful treatment her friend received. The elf points out that perhaps it was better if the alchemist kept silent about the truth, as it allowed him the privilege to ask and negotiate for things, to which Thor agrees, and he asks them mischievously to keep everything that he said a secret. The alchemist states that if the others were to find out that he was sent to them merely as a sacrifice, then the treatment toward him would change, and the Empire's reputation would become worse. So in return for their silence, Thor would also keep the Rookie's secret. Looking at the girls' grave faces, the young Regis figures that both of them understand what he's trying to get at, and he hopes they'll trust him as he quite relates to what the Demon King went through after all the awful experiences he had while he was still in the Empire. Rookie bursts out laughing, finding the whole situation hilarious, while Thor blushes, protesting a bit at how she's being mean. But the Demon King agrees with his proposal, stating that she'll trust him just as the alchemist trusted her. The young Regis is ecstatic, praising Rookie for being an excellent ruler, making her flush before she turns to Mabel to tell her that nothing they discuss will be leaked to anyone. The Demon King declares that Thor is still a precious guest from the Empire who's under her direct supervision, and she wants Mabel to make sure that Regis won't be treated any differently. The elf enthusiastically agrees, while Thor feels touched, and Rookie states that in that space they don't need to keep each other's secrets. When Mabel suggests that they hold tea parties inside the space so that the Demon King won't need to wear her disguise, Rookie thinks it's a great idea. As the space is turned into a setting for tea party meetings, the activity is called Kingdom's Tea Time, and from then on, the Demon King's territory starts to move forward gradually. Later, as they're making the space a little bit more homier, Mabel suddenly giggles, telling Thor that it's her first time to see Rookie laugh like she did earlier. As the alchemist is curious, the elf elaborates that her master has been raised as the next Demon King ever since she was young, and though the previous king was strong, he was also quite harsher on Rookie, urging her to attain a high level of power that will allow her to fight against several demon beasts at once. Thor is reminded of his father, who also wanted him to get strong and trained him without mercy, even to the brink of death, until he had no choice but to leave the household. When the alchemist inquires about Rookie's strength, Mabel tells him that when it comes to magic, the current Demon King is second to none. The young Regis wonders why she had to hide her appearance if that's the case, so Mabel explains it's so the other demons wouldn't assume she's weak, and the elf also warns him about one other person that Thor needs to be wary of. Mabel tells him of the flame general Rizenga, who's said to be a descendant of Ifrit and reputed to have one of the best martial arts. Recalling a certain historical event where Ifrit fought with some heroes for 7 days in a flaming castle, Thor resolves not to meet the said demon, making Mabel laugh before revealing there are some clan members of Rizenga who are kind. After the two of them agree to explore the castle grounds the next day, Mabel is about to leave when she requests Thor to drop the honorifics between them. As the alchemist looks reluctant, the elf shushes him, saying there's really no need to be formal with her, and finally he agrees. Just then, Mabel kneels as she pleads with Thor to stay with them forever, confessing that she'd like to stay by his side forever. The alchemist blushes, and the elf flushes as well, before she bids him goodnight and leaves. Thor's heart is still beating fast, but he smiles as he reflects on how much has happened when it's just been a few days since he just arrived at the Demon King's territory. Currently, the young Regis is feeling content, considering Mabel's words about staying with the demons forever, especially since he doesn't intend to return to the Empire anymore. As an alchemist, Thor resolves to make the Demon King's territory a bit more convenient to live in for Mabel, Rookie, and everyone who accepted him into their home. The next day, Curve is called by the Demon King, who reveals that she witnessed Thor creating items firsthand. Before she reveals anything further, Rookie instructs him not to fret, which he assures her that he'll do. But when he discovers that the item that the alchemist just created is the infamous storage box that heroes used before, immediately, he loses his composure. Startled by his reaction, Rookie tells him not to scream so suddenly, especially after assuring her that he wouldn't fluster. But Curve says he just can't help it, as the hero's storage box is one of the reasons why the Otherworld heroes were so strong. Back then, when the demons thought that heroes were unequipped, they'd pull weapons out of thin air, and when they took damage, they'd take out countless potion bottles. Rookie agrees with Curve that if all heroes had that skill, the demon race would have been extinct, and just the very thought of Thor creating one. The Prime Minister declares that the alchemist must make more of it. Nonchalantly, the Demon King tells him not to worry, as Thor already promised to create one for her and Mabel, which makes Curve dramatically stagger, muttering that it seems like rare items are no more. Once he's calmed down, Rookie also informs her subordinate that the young Regis wanted to be a reasonable alchemist in service of the Demon King, and that he promised to be the demon's ally. Curve agrees that the alchemist is someone they can trust, based on what he observed so far. But just then, the Prime Minister notices how his master is in good spirits, as she exclaims that she can't take her eyes off him. Curious and concerned, Curve asks the Demon King if something happened between her and the alchemist, to which Rookie replies that she and Thor simply talked and were able to understand each other beyond their own shoes. Meanwhile, around the time Thor arrives in the Demon King's territory, back in the Dulgarian Empire, nobles are enjoying a party at a guest house in the imperial capital. Just then, they notice that Duke Regis, the #1 noble in the empire, has arrived, and immediately people are whispering about him sending his own son as a sacrifice to the Demon King's territory. The nobles are impressed, and they start showering the Duke with rounds of applause, which pleases the man immensely, who thinks that praise and prestige certainly befits his name. He starts acting like the spotlight is a pain, and says that he's ever so glad that the stain on his name is gone. And hearing him mention reminds the Regis butler about what he discovered. The older man attempts to tell his master about Thor's alchemy skills, but he only gets harshly berated for even mentioning the boy and gets sent away. When the 30th Queen of Bulgaria, Rihanna, makes her appearance, everyone praises her strength and beauty. They're quite impressed by her magic, and that a treasured sword from the Age of the Heroes recognizes her as its owner, giving her the moniker the Sword Princess. Duke Regis proceeds to greet the queen, but upon seeing his face, she states he's an unwelcome guest and instructs her guards to make him leave at once. The Duke, who can't remember a single time he offended her, is shocked, and immediately guards try dragging him away. When he manages to break away from them, the prideful Duke questions the queen about what he did to earn her wrath, which irritates Rania, especially after she and her comrades went through danger because of the man's incompetence. As the older noble still doesn't have a clue, the queen makes him recall her request to have her magic sword repaired, and Rania reveals that after receiving her sword back, it couldn't withstand her own mana. It shattered at the worst moment when she was fighting a demonic beast, and the queen was only saved because her comrades fought desperately for her. Hearing that she came close to death horrifies everyone present, but still, Rania continues to say that after an investigation, she discovered that her sword wasn't repaired properly, and the ones responsible for it were the Regis household. The Duke starts sweating bullets, as everyone around him condemns his deceitful and untrustworthy actions, and the prestige he earned from sacrificing his son vanishes. Duke Regis refuses to let his reputation be ruined, so he starts passing the blame to the alchemists, who he says must have botched the repairs. However, the queen has already investigated that matter, and she shows everyone a document containing the mark of the Duke's household and the signature of the Duke's butler. It states that, as full restoration of the sword is difficult, the alchemist workshop will only fix up its appearance, and all responsibility will be taken by the Regis household. The Duke is shocked, as well as the crowd of nobles listening around them, and still, Rania reveals that the sword has only been fixed to a certain point, only its small defects causing it to break. The parts that were restored up to a point were able to withstand the queen's magic, and thanks to that, she was able to at least fight off the demonic beast's claws. The older noble loudly recalls that the sword was mainly used for rituals, which the queen confirms, but since the light mana around them recently started getting stronger, she decided to use it to hunt for demonic beasts, something that she previously told the Regis household. Rania wants to know the name of the person who first restored the sword, intending to make that person her tool, but the Duke has no real answer for her, saying it was probably some wandering alchemist who did the first restoration. Deeming him useless, Rania tells him to get out, and without a choice, the Duke heads toward the doors, totally devastated. When his butler approaches him, Duke Regis snaps, saying his name is ruined because of the butler's actions. The older man tries to explain, but his employer doesn't even give him a chance, and he gets sentenced to house arrest. In his carriage, the noble is desperate to restore his reputation, and he formulates a plan that will bring an advantage to the Empire, to prove that he's useful. The Duke intends to use demons and demi-human, and he grins wickedly, as they will be the key to reinstate, or perhaps even better, his position in the Empire. Back in the Demon King's territory, Mabel takes Thor around the castle, touring him around the place and introducing him to people. The two of them are having a lot of fun, and eventually they come across a statue of a woman who the elf says is the first-generation Demon King. As the alchemist takes an interest in the statue's sword, Mabel tells him that it's made from a stone that fell from the heavens and was used in the fight against heroes. When Thor comments that the sword is a replica, the elf tells him he's right, and that it broke during the war against the heroes. They don't know where it is right now, and Mabel is saying she wishes that the alchemist could have seen it when he says he'd gladly fix it if given the chance. The elf is stunned, as she never considered if the human can fix such a legendary sword, despite his already impressive skills, while the alchemist gets to thinking that he actually would rather make something that even surpasses the first Demon King's sword. He's already formulating some ideas, when Mabel asks Thor if he intends to make a sword for Rookie, which he confirms, making her excited about the idea. The elf whispers intimately into his ear, saying she'll do anything to help the alchemist, making him blush at their nearness. Behind them, some of the demon guards gossip about how happy Mabel is as she clings to Thor, which makes the two of them flush even more. Just as they're about to leave, someone calls out to them, wanting to talk with the Demon Lord's guest. To Thor's surprise, the demon is large, with flaming red hair, and he recalls there's only one person who fits that description. As the alchemist correctly guesses that the demon's name is Rizenga, the flame general, it pleases the man, who says he wants to meet the guest from the Empire. After Thor politely introduces himself, Rizenga introduces his daughter, Agnes, who then shyly greets the human. The flame general starts doting on his daughter, becoming so upset by her interest in Thor that he ends up calling the alchemist a fragile-looking man who probably can't fight. The human confirms that he doesn't have any fighting ability, which disappoints Rizenga as he wants Agnes to spar with a warrior from the Empire. Embarrassed at her father's behavior, steam starts to come out of Agnes's armor, prompting her father to calm her down. When the flame general starts asking Thor to tell him names of strong warriors from the Empire, Mabel intervenes, telling the demon not to bother the human as he's an honored guest of the Demon King. Rizenga comments that the Demon King's idea of learning about humans certainly is novel, but he's more interested in knowing the Empire's strength and combat prowess. The Flame General believes that a weakling shouldn't be given special treatment, and he asks the young Regis what he can do to be of service to their king. Rizenga unleashes his oppressive aura, scaring both the demon guards and Mabel, but Thor remains steady. The alchemist muses that the large demon can just smite him where he stands, and there's nothing he can do about it. But still, he wants to live without shame. Thor reveals he's an alchemist and offers to tune Agnes's armor, explaining that it isn't strong enough to withstand her flames and heat. He offers to strengthen the armor, but Rizenga isn't receptive to his idea, not wanting a weakling to touch his daughter's things. He leaves abruptly, while his daughter is more graceful, rendering everyone who's left silent. Once they're fully gone, the demon guards are in awe of Thor for not even flinching under Rizenga's attention, and Mabel is quite impressed as well, especially since the Flame General is one of the top 5 strongest demons currently alive. But the alchemist only says he was too taken about the attributes and components of Agnes's armor to be actually scared. Despite Rizenga's interruption, Thor wants to continue the tour, deciding not to think about what just happened yet. He and Mabel continue to have fun, not knowing the danger he'll be involved with Rizenga in the future. After they finish the tour, Mabel suggests that Thor enjoy the baths, and he agrees. But before they part, she tells him to look out for tags so he won't mistakenly enter a bath that's already occupied. Later, at the baths, Thor follows the elf's advice and finds one without a tag. However, after entering one, he spots a familiar-looking armor belonging to that of the Flame General's daughter. Suddenly, the alchemist hears a noise coming from a salamander, a creature whom Mabel said had served Ifrit that now keeps the baths warm. Deciding to check them out, Thor not only finds the salamanders, but also a naked woman surrounded by fire. With a point of her finger, the red-haired woman makes the flames grow big, apologizing to the salamanders with her as she couldn't control her flames too well. After observing her flaming body, the alchemist realizes that Ifrit's descendants wear no clothes as none can withstand their flame, leaving them naked whenever they're not wearing armor. He decides to give her privacy when a salamander notices his presence and rams the doors, before sending its fire his way. Thankfully, Thor can trap the fire in a super small-sized storage box that he prepared in case of emergency. Agnes panics, thinking she's harmed the honored guest of the Demon King, but Thor assures her he's fine. Blushing, the alchemist requests the equally embarrassed demon to put on clothes first before they speak. Once again in her armor, Agnes introduces herself properly to Thor, and he does the same as well, before apologizing sincerely for what happened earlier, saying he never meant to peek at the demon while she was naked. Flustered, Agnes says he isn't at fault, as she was being careless and didn't even put up a tag to tell people she was using the bath. When she apologizes for making him see something unsightly, Thor states that actually, he found her really beautiful, making the demon blush and steam once again escape her armor. Deciding to change the topic, the alchemist says he finds people with Ifrit's blood amazing, as even rare items can't hold out against their flames. Agnes reveals that she doesn't have good control of her flames, as whenever she becomes excited or nervous, they just come out without her meaning to. The flame demon had intended to see the salamanders as if perhaps they could help train her, having seen them as friends ever since she was young. The Flame General's daughter admits that she isn't too fond of her powers, recalling how before her magic awakened, she could wear all the clothes that she wanted, but now they all just burn away, and sometimes she even accidentally causes harm to other people. After hearing about her troubles, Thor resolves to help Agnes with her situation, and his confidence makes her hope that one day she'll be able to wear clothes again. Still, the woman is hesitant, scared at how her father will react when he finds out what he intends to do for her. But Thor states he'll just show Rizenga what he's capable of, to make him understand how he can be useful to the Demon King. He pleads with Agnes to let him help her, and eventually she agrees, tearfully saying she doesn't want to be trapped by her armor anymore. Thor is ecstatic, and he plans to go right to work immediately, but for now, the alchemist hands her the super small-sized storage box, where Agnes can store her flames if she feels they get too much. The flame demon is stunned at being given such a precious item, but Thor assures her that he can just make more of it before leaving a grateful Agnes. For those who inherit Ifrit's blood, their control over their flames will increase as they get older, and it's only when they reach the age of 20 that they achieve full control. As for Agnes, she still has 5 more years to go, and until then, she won't be able to wear clothes and can only play with salamanders. Thor muses that a temporary fix won't be enough, realizing that he needs to find a fundamental solution to Agnes's problem. Once again, the alchemist decides to consult the catalog, and upon entering his room, he finds Mabel inside and tells her of his plan to help Agnes. The elf wants to help too, revealing that she's good friends with the flame demon and that they used to play together. Mabel even reveals that she once got burned by Agnes's flames, which caused the red-haired girl to become withdrawn and avoid Mabel. Having an even deeper understanding of what the flame demon is going through, Thor becomes even more determined to help Agnes, so that she and Mabel can reunite and become friends. After flipping through the catalog, he finds a health enhancement pendant that will help circulate the energy in the body and even enhance a person's health. Though their world and the hero's world have different elements, Thor manages to figure out how to make a pendant to make one in their work, before explaining the process to Mabel, who's once again in awe at how innovative and terrifying heroes are. The alchemist, on the other hand, is excited, immediately moving to start his new project. Thor activates his skill, over alchemy, and after getting the right dimensions of the pendant and the right drawings to engrave on it, he sets to figuring out what elements to use in place of the ones that aren't present in their world. Just then, over alchemy helps him gain knowledge of otherworldly mana and elements, even the ability to manipulate them. Having no reason to hesitate anymore, Thor starts creating the pendant, and after Mabel confirms that he got the drawings right, he ends up with a very rare pendant that can convert strong fire magic into equally distributed powers of the other elements. As the engravings allow for better mana circulation in the body, Mabel suggests that Thor should also engrave them around the entirety of the Demon King's territory, an idea that the alchemist thinks is good, but quite hard. Thor feels satisfied, and he muses that if the pendant works the way it should, with everybody being able to use it, it might become standard equipment for everyone. Meanwhile, in another part of the castle, Agnes comes across with her worried father, who's been searching all over the place for her, after being assured that his daughter is all right. Rizenga states that he feels bad that Agnes is having a hard time, since Ifrit's blood within her is especially strong, and like their ancestor, his daughter can instinctively control flames through emotions, which Rizenga admits that he can't do. Agnes already knows all of this, and to keep her from being grim, the Flame General tells her that soon, they'll be heading back to their territory, where they can start the mines, as he's been authorized to conduct joint operations with the Empire. Since their territory is close to the border, their family has no choice but to maintain good relations with the Empire, which is why he wanted to check out their human guest. Just recalling the weak young man from earlier makes Rizenga laugh, finding it hilarious that he has no combat skill whatsoever when he's a nobleman of the Empire, which once housed the strongest of heroes. Agnes becomes upset, telling her father to stop making fun of Thor, since he's actually a good person. When Rizenga asks if she has spoken to the human again, his daughter says yes, and reveals the gift that the alchemist has given her. The Flame General becomes upset that his daughter became cross with him, and he states that even if Agnes has the human's gift, it still doesn't change the fact that all she can wear is armor, since she doesn't know yet to control her flames. Rizenga reminds his daughter that no matter what, he's always thinking of her, and in fact, the mining project he wants to start is for her sake too. If it becomes successful, they'll then need to get rid of the obstacles that made their nests in the mines, and at that moment, Agnes can show everyone how useful her magic is. While Rizenga is convinced she'll do well, and that everyone will acknowledge her strength, Agnes simply accepts the heavy burden of her father's expectations. She wants a more peaceful way to live, but with her powers, the flame demon doesn't know what to do. Back when she was younger, when her flames manifested, Agnes accidentally hurt her friend, and anyone who came close to the girl would get burned and driven away. Despite that, there are people like Thor, as well as her salamander friends, who are kind to her and not scared at all of her flames. Agnes understands why Mabel hangs around him, as both of them are kind, and though she wants to join their group, she can't. Perhaps not until she's 20. Later, Agnes sheds her armor, musing that there's probably not enough time for the alchemist to find a way to suppress her flames. She's already satisfied with his gift, and tomorrow, the flame demon is determined to give him her thanks for even just thinking that he wants to help her. Meanwhile, the Demon King and his Prime Minister discuss the matter regarding the location of Thor's workshop, and how they're having trouble finding a good one for the alchemist. They agree that a location that doesn't have too many people, but is naturally equipped with his needs, is ideal for Thor's workshop, and now all they need is someone who can be his bodyguard. Silently, Rukia is concerned about how Rizenga will treat the human, even though she's already sent an order not to treat her guest roughly. The Demon King knows he won't actually hurt Thor, and she really would rather not, as giving out punishments for the alchemist's safety will ruin his reputation, as demons will end up becoming wary of approaching him. In the end, Rukia doesn't tell the Prime Minister any of her worries, and simply trusts him to find a good location for the workshop. The next day, Agnes meets up with Thor, becoming surprised when she discovers that Mabel tagged along with him. The elf apologizes, saying she wants to lend any help she can provide, while the alchemist muses that he's right in assuming that Agnes still worries over the scar she gave Mabel years ago. The fire demon bids him farewell, saying she'll be leaving soon with her father to their territory, and the redhead expresses her gratitude that Thor wanted to create something for her. But right then, they simply don't have the time to make the item that the alchemist wanted to give her. To her surprise, he states he's done creating the item that'll help put her flames away, before showing her the pendant. The alchemist starts explaining how it works, but Agnes is still in disbelief that the item was made so fast. When Mabel approaches Agnes to give her some clothes, the flame demon suddenly remembers what he did to the elf years ago. The redhead recoils, saying she doesn't want to hurt anyone anymore, but Mabel assures her that there's nothing for her to be scared of, as Thor's items always work. As she's still hesitant, the alchemist promises to tune the pendant on the spot if something goes wrong, adding that remaking and creating magic items is something he likes to do. Agnes calms down and agrees to try the item, saying if she misses this chance, she'll regret it forever. While waiting for Agnes to show up, Thor waits with the salamanders, and finally she appears, wearing a maid costume. As she's thinking that she looks weird, the alchemist assures her that she looks cute, flustering the flame demon so much that she can't string up a proper sentence. The pendant has successfully converted her excess fire magic into the magic of other elements, which then activates their effects, such as the strengthening effects of both mind and body. Agnes feels great, her body feels so light, and she even jumps higher than she usually does, much to her shock. Thor says that now the fire demon doesn't need to worry anymore about burning her clothes, but at the moment, Agnes does worry as she's not wearing panties. The two of them blush, before Thor celebrates silently. The creation of the pendant is a total success. Mabel thanks the alchemist, saying her wish has come true, and without wasting a moment, she hugs Agnes. The flame demon feels nervous, thinking that her flames will suddenly come out, but the elf only apologizes to her, saying it was probably her who gave Agnes the trauma of burning someone up. Tearfully, the flame demon says the one at fault is her, as she was so in awe of her awakening power that unintentionally made it go berserk. Mabel recalls that her friend had already apologized many times, but the elf is convinced she made matters worse, as she was a total crybaby back then. The two make up, finally hugging each other after so long, which evokes even more tears from Agnes. When Mabel invites Thor to hug the flame demon as well, he agrees enthusiastically, and the two of them are about to touch each other when Rizenga, who's again looking for his daughter, shows up. The flame general is shocked and asks Thor what's going on, but he only answers that there's a lot of stuff going on, so he'll need some time to explain. Still, Rizenga is furious, and he intends to attack the alchemist, but Mabel immediately intervenes. The flame general tells her to step aside, but the elf refuses to, saying it's her responsibility to protect the Demon King's precious guest. And besides, the alchemist is helping his daughter. Rizenga isn't listening to Mabel, as he is too angry at Thor, who he's convinced touched her inappropriately. Everyone is alarmed, and still the Flame General attacks, leaving the alchemist helpless. However, Agnes protects them, catching her father's wrist with her hand. Sternly, Agnes demands her father to listen to Thor, while everyone else is shocked by her strength. The red-haired woman's stats are through the roof, converting her excess fire magic and strengthening her other attributes. Rizenga can't break free from his daughter's hold, and as the pendant on her chest is glowing, he wonders what happened to his daughter. Agnes replies that Thor gave his best for her, and reveals that it's thanks to him that she's now able to wear normal clothes again, shocking her father further as, indeed, she isn't wearing her armor anymore. Thor tries explaining again, but the Flame General is still being unreasonable, accusing Thor of fooling his daughter into wearing clothes so that when she burns them, he'll see her naked body. Rizenga unleashes his flames in fury, but the alchemist quickly sucks them into his small storage box, stunning the Flame General. Now that he's listening, the young Regis reveals that, as the alchemist who serves under the Demon King, his goal is to solve problems ailing the people of the demon realm so he can make their lives comfortable. Thor declares that he's found a way to fix Agnes's magic, but still, Rizenga's mounting fury can't be controlled. When he lunges for Thor, he's thwarted by his own daughter, who refuses to let her new friend come into harm. Agnes continues to face off with her own father, who no matter what he does, can't escape his daughter's grasp. Thor realizes that the red-headed girl is channeling all her energy into her pendant, which allows her life energy to double many times its usual amount, enough to stop her father's rampaging. Agnes says that before, all she did was hurt people, but now, with Thor's item that she received, the flame demon can finally protect the people who are important to her. Just then, Agnes raises her father's body above her head, presenting both Thor and Mabel with an amusing sight. Later, when everyone has calmed down, especially Rizenga, his daughter explains that for her sake, Thor has created an item called the Vitality Pendant that could suppress her flames and convert them into other types of magic. Stunned, the Flame General apologizes, saying he's ashamed to act in such an awful way to the person who only wants to help his daughter. Rizenga's earnest words surprise Thor, and the older man continues to feel bad for being short-sighted, even wanting to gouge his eyes for being useless and clouded. Thor stops Rizenga, saying that doing that is going a bit too far, and since the alchemist will be living in the Demon King's territory, he simply wants for them to coexist peacefully. The Flame General finally understands, and he requests to be included in whatever matters that'll concern his daughter in the future. Aside from that, he wants to pay for the pendant that Agnes is now using. Thor can see how deeply Rizenga cares for his daughter, unlike his awful father who quickly sacrificed him for having no fighting ability. And for a moment he wonders if he's feeling jealous, while the Flame General agrees to Thor's advice of building a more solid connection with his daughter from now on. Later, Rizenga kneels before the Demon King, who comments it's quite rare for the Flame General to seek an audience with her. Rookie muses how the older demon looked down on her, before, as he always valued physical strength more than anything else, and she terribly wants to gain his loyalty, which is why it's a total surprise when Rizenga suddenly swears his loyalty to the Demon King in the name of the Origin Flame. Curve is floored as swearing in the name of the original flame, like what the Flame Giant did when he swore his blood to the first Demon King, carries a lot of weight. When Rookie asks Rizenga why he did that, the Flame General reveals that he's been utterly rude to the Demon King's guest, so he must apologize, especially since Thor found a way to control Agnes's flames. Rookie and Kelvy are stunned, while Rizenga continues to explain how he got blinded by rage as he thought the alchemist was deceiving his daughter. But he was quickly sorted out by his daughter, who has gotten even stronger with the item that Thor gifted her. The Demon King and the Prime Minister fall silent, and eventually, Rookie gets amused that Thor easily got what she always wanted, Rizenga's loyalty. While Curve is losing his mind over the new developments, the Demon King decides how he should punish Rizenga for his blunder. When she asks the Flame General what punishment Thor wished upon him, Rizenga reveals the human actually didn't wish anything upon him, but after much insistence, the teen eventually states he just wants materials for alchemy. Rookie thinks Thor is brilliant as the Flame General doesn't care about his own reputation and is much more concerned about his daughter's, so he probably doesn't think a punishment is needed. In the Demon King's territory at the mining zone, fearsome demons run rampant, devouring everything in their midst. When a group of humans suddenly appears, their leader announces that there's a buried treasure hidden around that they should find, and he brushes off any concern of whether they'll be attacked by the Flame General, or by dangerous demons. The bald man declares he'll strike down anyone who stands in their way, making his comrades laugh. Unbeknownst to the humans, spiders' web approach them, and suddenly their leader is captured, being dragged away by a spider's web before meeting a gruesome death. The men are horrified and they start running away, though there's no escape from them. Back at the demon castle, Thor wonders about the stone that Agnes gave him earlier, and after using his appraisal skill, the alchemist discovers that it's meteoric iron, a stone fallen from the dark space. Just then, his appraisal skill awakens an ability for Thor to add space element magic to whatever item he wants, and he can't help but muse that since he arrived at the Demon Lord's territory, he's learned more and more elements than he ever thought he would. After exiting his storage box, the alchemist remembers that Agnes wants to show him something, but since he still has time, Thor decides to head toward the next storage room and clean up there for a bit. Upon seeing the messy place, the young Regis gets excited, thinking there's a mountain of treasure that's waiting for him to be discovered. Unexpectedly, he finds a sword remarkably similar to the replica that the statue of the first Demon King is holding, and he's observing it closely when the Demon King arrives. Unexpectedly, the fearsome leader of all the demons is dressed up nicely, revealing she plans to use the outfit at the next party, while Thor praises her for looking pretty in the dress. The Demon King doesn't like how formally the alchemist is addressing her, especially since the two of them are alone at the moment, and she instructs him to call her Rookie. During their banter, when the Demon King suddenly pouts, Thor blushes, finding her absolutely cute. As Rookie asks what the alchemist has been doing, he replies he's been cleaning when he found a sword, and he asks her if she knows what it is, since its length isn't the same as the one on the statue. When Thor is asked for his opinion, he guesses that it must be a prototype, and that perhaps someone must have wanted to recreate the lost magic sword. But since it didn't quite resemble the original, the project was abandoned. The Demon King tells him he's right, recalling that during her grandfather's time, there was a plan to revive the magic sword, but it ended up failing. When the alchemist asks if he can keep the sword, Rookie says there's no need to ask her, as the room is his entire workshop. She even formally hands the sword to him, which Thor is thankful for, and it makes him wonder if he can make a real magic sword just based on the replica. Rookie is stunned at his words, while the alchemist states again that as his dream is to create a sword that surpasses the holy swords of the Empire, he intends to give it to Rookie for her to use. Thor suggests that she can use it when she goes to defeat the beasts, but she replies that though his thoughtfulness makes her happy, Rookie doesn't need a magic sword to defeat the beasts. Instead, the Demon King prefers something that will allow them to attack from a distance, and she also reveals that she prefers items that give support during combat. Thor gets excited, and immediately rushes off to make someone, making Rookie sigh fondly. Thor throws himself into research, and discovers that demon beasts are creatures that can't communicate and attack both humans and demons. Though the alchemist is a bit regretful that he can't make a sword for Rookie, he focuses on doing his best for his current task, and soon, he has decided on what to make. The young Regis tells Mabel that it's a special tool for defeating demon beasts, and enlists her help to make it, before diving headfirst to the technical parts of creating the item. Thor activates over alchemy, and soon, he has the item in his hands, a laser pointer. But Mabel is still confused about how the item works. The alchemist shows her the page of the catalog where he found the item, and he wrongly concludes that it's used by a commander to direct his soldiers exactly which enemy to defeat first, making it possible for their adversaries to simply just fall silently and fast. Since the page said that it's not to be used on humans, Thor figures it must be an item used to deal with demonic beasts. And though they additionally make other wild conjectures, the alchemist thinks it's quite a powerful and terrifying object that could change the course of a war in that world. Outside, on their way to test their new item, Thor and Mabel spot the elf and minotaur commander arguing about their formations on the upcoming battle with the demonic beast Gargalosa, who's a giant arachnid with a huge following of smaller monsters. From what Thor gathers, the agreed formation is for the minotaurs to directly attack the demonic beasts, while the elves, who are the support, are left farther away from danger. The problem appears when the vanguard gets closer to the beasts. A small group of monsters then focus their attention, leaving them and the whole army vulnerable. Deciding to stay away from their conversation, Thor follows Mabel as she leads him to a place where they can use the laser, with a target practice at the end of a long field. To see how effective it will be, the alchemist starts aiming, while a red dot appears on the target. He instructs Mabel to use her magic and focus on the red light emitted by the laser, and after she releases it, her skill joins the path of the red light and hits the target right in the center. Thor is pleased, and immediately he wants to test how far they can use the laser, and again, the item proves effective. The arguing commanders are interrupted when a spell flies near them, and they become confused as the person practicing their spells is doing it from a crazy long distance. Observing for a bit, they witness a spell being fired off at a high speed, hitting the target dead right in the center, stunning them. Meanwhile, Thor has run through the full training ground, and still, the laser is quite effective. He declares to Mabel that their experiment is a success, but the elf has some questions. She wonders why they can still hit the target, when the limit of the item has been surpassed, and how they managed to hit the same spot again and again from the very first spell. Thor guesses that Mabel's spell earlier was attracted by the flow of magic coming from the laser, and since the laser pointer creates a magic connection between itself and the spot it targets, it then never misses. The two of them just then realize how dangerous the item is, and they fear once again the heroes and their world from where the item is based. As they're finished, they agree to go to the Demon King and show her the item. But first, Thor figures they need to clean the mess they made at the training field. However, the commanders insist that they'll do it themselves, and while the alchemist is curious about what they think of their experimentation earlier, he decides to simply thank them for now. When they leave, the commanders are still bewildered, completely forgetting what they've been discussing earlier, as their thoughts are filled with the fearsome spectacle they've seen earlier. The elf commander finally understands the humans' almost fantastical capabilities, as that deadly item earlier was merely made in just minutes. Immediately, they approach Curve and tell him everything they witnessed, and all the while, the Prime Minister becomes increasingly stressed as he listens to them. Later, an anxious Curve yells for Thor, demanding an explanation regarding his newest item. At the same time, in the Dulgarian Empire, a drunk Duke Regis declares it's about time for the negotiations between the humans and the demons to start, and he plans to use this opportunity to restore his name. Regarding his plan, the Duke intends to cooperate with the most powerful of demons to eliminate the demonic beasts, and among the demons, the noble knows that it'll be Rizenga who'll accept the deal for silver. Afterward, he'll propose to Rizenga to attack the next demon beast, and manipulate all the information gained to his advantage. With this, he'll be able to wedge a division between Rizenga and the Empire, and once the Empire thinks that Rizenga is stealing silver himself, it will sow doubts toward the Demon King, which could then cause a rebellion against the Demon King to happen. The Duke thinks it's a genius strategy, and after recalling the fall of his household, he becomes even more determined to execute his plan. Already, Duke Regis is imagining his success, being applauded and cheered, while some girls look admiringly at him. Chuckling, he muses that he still has some parts of his plan to refine, but he knows it'll succeed, and smugly, he gives himself a toast. Later, when Rizenga is about to have a meeting with an envoy from the Empire, he gets advised by his daughter to always remain respectful and avoid misunderstandings, to which he says he'll try his best. As the two parties will be discussing something important, more specifically defeating the demonic beasts, the Flame General is determined not to allow anything that may lead to a breakdown of relations, especially now that he made an oath of the flame to the Demon King. Rizenga still remembers how he tried to intimidate Thor, and he's very ashamed of the memory, so what he can do now is strive to be an adult who will stand proud in both the alchemist's and his daughter's presence. After entering the room, the Flame General is greeted by Marquis Guerra of the Dulgarian Empire, who butters up the demon with praises of his past accomplishments. However, Rizenga remains stoic and humble, not the aggressive and arrogant man that the Marquis expected him to be. After Guerra agrees to lend around 200 of the Empire's soldiers, during the subjugation of the beast Gargalosa, they start talking about compensation. The Marquis wants to extend the duration of the Empire receiving silver to 4 years, but Rizenga tells him that he already made it clear to the Demon King that the duration is only 1 year. With a greedy smile, Guerra suggests that perhaps Rizenga himself can personally send silver to the Empire, and in exchange, he'll find himself having strong relations with the Empire. The Flame General is offended that he's being coerced into deceiving the Demon King, but the Marquis says it isn't like that. Rather, it won't be suspicious if there'll be some occasional calculation errors upon reporting the mining output, and in such cases, it won't be amiss if the Empire will get a small quantity out of those errors. Rizenga is starting to get mad, but then Guerra suggests something outrageous. If somehow the backdealings are discovered and they go south, they can always pin the blame on the young man who just came from the Empire, much to Rasenga's shock. Rasenga recalls how kind Thor treated him and slams his fist down onto the table in anger, which shuts up Gera. Still heeding his daughter's advice and trying to stay calm, Rasenga questions Gera if the idea to use Thor as a scapegoat and shift all the blame onto him is solely Gera's, to which the latter reveals that the proposal initially came from his father, Duke Ragus. At this, the Flame Emperor clarifies his question, asking if the human emperor knows about the plan. Not reading the room's atmosphere, Gera proudly tells him that the emperor does not know about it, as he explains that not every single report requires the little details. At this, Rasenga darkly comments that he is relieved, as that means he can still reserve his judgment toward the Empire as a whole, and with the most terrifying expression, he angrily orders Gera to shut up. As he revels in his wrath, Rasenga berates Gera for his audacity to even dare suggest deceiving the Demon King he is loyal to and pinning Thor as the scapegoat, as he reveals that Thor is his close friend and ideal future son-in-law. Initially, frozen in fear and speechless, Gera snaps out of it when he is taken aback by Rasenga's claims about Thor, in disbelief that someone who is believed to be utterly useless to the Empire is a cherished and valuable ally to the Flame General. Rasenga continues to rage on, telling Gera that he will personally report to the Emperor of the Empire about the matter. Even then, Gera tries to stop him from doing so, and points out that Rasenga will benefit a lot from his proposal, but the latter does not want to hear any more of it, as he destroys the table next to them out of pure wrath, ordering the former to leave. After all, he has no desire to ever speak with such despicable people like Gera anymore. Scared to death, the Empire envoy quickly crawls out of the room as he curses his father for letting him deal with such a difficult person. As Gera escapes, the Flame General's daughter comes running out, confused but horrified over the disastrous outcome of the meeting. At this, all Rasenga says is that he still has much to learn. A few days later, to Rookie, Curvy is relaying the detailed report written and sent in by the Flame General about the meeting with Gera, revealing everything from the plan to deceive the Demon King to using Thor as the scapegoat. Expectedly, Rookie is rightfully in a bad mood because of the report, though it is not yet over as Curve proceeds to hand her another letter from the Empire, explaining Gera's actions. She reads it aloud, the contents claiming that the proposal was not discussed with the Emperor and does not represent the will of the Empire, so they are void of any responsibility over Gera's actions. Rookie can only sigh more in disappointment, as she recalls back to when Thor confessed for the first time how he was sent to the Demon King as a sacrifice instead of a normal guest. She feels even more heartache and frustration over the reality of his mistreatment. Seeing her complicated expression, Curve asks if he should go and speak to Thor about the matter, to which Rookie insists on doing it herself, especially since Thor is working under her as her alchemist. She continues to point out that since she was the one who initially granted permission to mind development, as well as for negotiations with the Empire to happen, she will also take responsibility for telling the bad news to Thor and plans to visit his room soon. Unable to refute her, Curve accepts her decision and encourages her, as well as admits truthfully that he is grateful to Thor for a number of reasons. Most recently, it is because of the latter that they were able to have a fully trustworthy relationship with the Flame General, as there is mutual trust from both ends with how Rasenga reported the full situation honestly, and Curve had no doubt in believing him. Otherwise, they would have had to deal with dire consequences if there was even the smallest doubt between them, resulting in more distance between them. Hence, since Thor was the one to enable Rasenga's oath, Curve feels that he is indebted to the former and swears to do anything to fulfill any of his desires. Though impressed by Curve's honesty and dedication, she teases him about how he would attend to Thor's desires if the latter were to ask for a mountain of magical items, flustering him. Nonetheless, she promises to relay his feelings toward Thor. Later in the storage unit, the trio are having their tea party, though Rookie finds it difficult to break the bad news since Thor and Mabel seem to be in a cheerful mood as they smile and laugh while conversing with each other. As the two talk lightly about making laser pointers, Rookie continues to find herself in a difficult position as she sees how happy Thor is at the moment, trying to stall for time by eating more pastries and drinking her tea. She thinks about how she should have summoned him earlier into the throne room and told him about the conspiracy against him there, as it would have fit the atmosphere much better. Not only that, but she believes that she would have much less difficulty in her masked demon lord outfit, as she always felt more confident when talking to a subordinate or giving punishments in it. Nonetheless, she knows that she has a duty to tell Thor about his father's conspiracy, despite the positive setting, and puts down her cup, finally telling him that she has some news about the negotiations meetings to pass on to him. At this, Thor immediately puts on a serious expression and asks her to go on, to which she nervously and vaguely tells him that some strange but minor issues were found during the meeting. She does her best to recap on what happened during the meeting between Rosenga and Gora, though soon enough, both Mabel and Thor are visibly concerned over Rookie, and worriedly, they ask her what was wrong. Their worried demeanor confuses Rookie, but as tears drop to the table, it is revealed that she has started crying while trying to tell Thor about the conspiracy. Even then, she continues to stammer through her tears until the end, until the other two tell him to calm down first. At this point, she can no longer hold back and breaks into a full sob. Once Rookie finishes rambling about the meeting, Thor is visibly disappointed by the truth, but is not surprised, knowing that it is something his father would do. Despite this, Rookie still cannot comprehend why his father would be able to treat him so cruelly as a son, and even holds on to his hands as she admits that she cannot help but feel sorry for him. At this, Thor redirects the attention back to Rookie and tears up, telling her that she is a good person for crying over him, to which she instinctively tells him to shut up out of embarrassment. Nonetheless, she is still in disbelief over the extent of his father's cruelty, and even Mabel joins in, asking why his father would go so far as to frame him. With a disappointed face, Thor deduces that it is because of the Empire's policies, as he reminds them of how they value military strength over everything else. He reveals that not only was his father a strong warrior, but his grandfather as well. In fact, the latter was even named a master swordsman, in other words, a sword saint. However, his grandfather ended up perishing at the hands of bandits when he was drunk. Though this life event happened when he was still very young, Thor remembers realizing how no matter how strong one becomes, one is still able to be struck down at their weak point by someone stronger if they ever let their guard down. Thus, even if Thor did aim to become the strongest, it would still be meaningless to him. Instead, he decided that he wanted to use his skills to good use and improve others' lives, helping others instead of strengthening himself. Both Rookie and Mabel are not surprised by this life motto he goes by, saying that it fits his character very well. Unfortunately for Thor, his father refuses to think in such a way and does not allow Thor to think that way either. After all, the people of the Empire were very influenced by the old hero of the Empire, and their way of thinking warped their senses, as they would do anything to achieve power and fame to further their goals. But since they were never able to match the old hero's exact strength, their lifestyle only became more and more extreme. Even so, Rookie is unable to understand why the Duke still wants to sacrifice Thor as a way to preserve his pride, to which Thor agrees neither can he. Hence, the latter admits that the conspiracy plan to get rid of him is his last straw, as he is fed up with the Regis family and has decided to change his name. From then on, he requests Rookie and Mabel to stop calling him Thor Regis, and instead, Thor Cannon. This is his way of cutting ties with his father's side, as he prefers to go by his mother's surname instead. Though surprised by this sudden action, Rookie and Mabel are immediately supportive and encouraging of his new name, praising him. Thor is used to being called by his mother's surname as well, as he used it before while working at the government office. However, in official terms, he still needs to be referred to as someone from the Regis family, since he was sent as a hostage to the Demon King's territory. But when it is just the three of them, he will go by his new name instead, to which Rookie and Mabel agree. Once they have clarified the matters, Thor points out to Rookie that she is still holding on to his hand, so she quickly lets it go in a flustered manner. She explains that she took his hand out of impulse, as she was overwhelmed with sadness over Thor's mistreatment by his own family, to which he tears up once more and shows his appreciation for her empathy. At this, Rookie confesses that she wishes they could hold hands even until they fall asleep, which is something Thor is both taken aback by and flustered by. Quickly doubling down over his reaction, Rookie shyly confesses that she means that she purely wants to go to sleep while holding hands innocently, which causes Thor's heart to skip a beat, as he cannot help but think how cute she is. However, Mabel quickly chimes in about how Rookie cannot stay over in Thor's room, since her bedroom is located in an area of the castle that is off-limits to men. Rookie acknowledges that it is an impossible request, though this only motivates Thor more as he already starts to think of a way to solve the problem and figure out a way to hold hands while sleeping in separate rooms. Quickly flipping the pages to the reference book, he finally finds something that may work and calls the two girls over to check, making them both react with intrigue and delight. Once he earns Rookie's approval, he immediately starts making preparations for creating the item. Once the preparations are complete, Thor gathers Rookie and Mabel to help out as he reviews the materials he needs, which include a pure white sheet, a large amount of empty pea pod shells, and an empty magic stone. He then begins by activating his skills and making the magic stone spread thinly on top of the sheet, dissolving it into the sheet. He then instructs Rookie to try to imagine the sheet stretching out, and when she does, it immediately does so in reality as well. While Rookie is shocked and confused as to how it works, he explains that the sheet has become a freely stretchable sheet since it possesses the magic powers of the magic stone. He then does the same to the pea pods, and they are able to reshape and resize according to Rookie's command. After doing so, he proceeds to expand the image diagram by merging the sheet and pea pods together, and then adding various elements for different traits, such as water to make it smooth, wind for good breathability, and even the empty magic stones to the sheet to store more magic power. Once he finishes the process, it is revealed that he has created a magical body pillow that can recreate the sensation of hugging a loved one, as the fabric is similar to that of human skin, and the inner beads of the pillow can reshape it to whatever one likes. However, Rookie is still skeptical about its effectiveness, as she wonders how it can help them join their hands across rooms. At this, Mabel points out that the magical body pillow is definitely not the same as normal ones, especially if it is based on the type from the old hero's world. She reminds Rookie that almost everything from the hero's world has deeper meanings or codes, making them more powerful than the things from their own world. Rookie acknowledges Mabel's point and proceeds to ask Thor about his own vision for the pillow. With a determined face, he claims to the two of them that he is certain that the body pillow can transform into a human shape, shocking them. He reminds them of how one of the old summoned heroes had the ability to freely change their appearance as they possessed shape-shifting powers. Rookie remembers it clearly, as she recounts how that hero used such powers to infiltrate the previous Demon King's army. Then, once his real identity was revealed, he turned into a dragon. This kind of power was made possible through the mechanism of the granules of magical power, as the hero used the lumps of magic that can take any color or shape to create a false body, wearing it like a full bodysuit costume. As he uses this analogy, Rookie finally understands the body pillow uses the same mechanism, which Thor confirms as he explains that the special beads in the pillow are actually magical granules, like in the hero's legend. With this in mind, he cannot help but wonder where the people of the hero's world were able to get such creativity and technical skills. Moving on, the trio finally decides to test out the pillow's effect and instruct Mabel to infuse her magic into the pillowcase, and once she does, the pillow starts to react to her. He explains that once the magic stones absorb her powers, they will contain the individual's information as well, and be able to take Mabel's form. However, they are still somewhat skeptical about the outcome, to which Thor simply hopes that it all works out in the end. As they let the magic infuse with the pillow, it slowly starts taking shape, and finally it transforms into a clone of Mabel. Both Rookie and Mabel are amazed by how it looks exactly like the latter, though Thor keeps a stoic expression as he seems to still be on guard about the results. Meanwhile, Mabel has some fun with the body double, moving it however she imagines it to, and cheers about how it is a huge success. However, just as she thinks Rookie's dream can come true, Thor suddenly transforms the body pillow back to its real form, and he establishes that it is a failure, confusing the other two. Surprised by Thor's verdict, they point out that it worked perfectly well, and wonder why he is dissatisfied with the results. He explains that though it looks identical on the outside, it still is not even able to capture half of the full extent of Mabel's true charm. He goes on a tangent about how her appeal is not just her pretty looks, but her personality traits as well, like her kindness, strength, resilience, and how well she has been taking care of him ever since he arrived in the demon territory. With a strangely straight face, he passionately recalls all the things she has done for him. He claims that part of her charm is how quickly she can put his mind at ease just by being present. However, he did not feel that way with the body pillow, which is why he deems it a failure to capture her full charm. Hearing all of this soon causes Mabel to react in embarrassment, and though he tries to go on about her, Rookie advises against it as she points out how overwhelmed the former is by his words. Agreeing to stop himself, He passes the body pillow prototype first to Rookie and promises to improve it with more time. Even then, Rookie is happy with the current pillow and suggests to Mabel that they have a sleepover that night to test the body pillow out together. But before they leave, Rookie tells Thor that the real him is still different from the body pillow version of him, especially since the original is much more important to her. This flusters Thor, and while embarrassed, he finally understands why Mabel was overwhelmed by his own speech about her merits earlier as well. Once the two are gone, Thor decides to make some more magical fabric for the body pillows before he goes to bed, though he is also still concerned about the magical beast's subjugation. Even though he remembers that Rookie told him that it would be unnecessary, he still decides to make her enchanted sword in case of an emergency. Meanwhile, that night, the two girls are lying on either side of the body pillow version of Thor, though they soon find that they are unable to sleep due to just how intimate and embarrassing it feels. Due to this, Thor's body pillow ends up giving the opposite effect of what it was intended for, making them too restless to sleep for the rest of the night. Sometime later, in the mining region of the territory, a bear is walking through the forest when it is suddenly attacked by large spider beasts, and as it is eaten by them, an even larger spider beast overlooks it. On a cliff looking over the forest, a group of lizardmen soldiers are investigating the scene and find that the new magical spider beasts are rapidly increasing in population as the breeding speed has exceeded their expectations. Due to this, the main body, referring to the largest spider beast, has left its nest and is actively spreading more nests throughout the forest, wreaking more havoc on the land. Unable to even imagine how many more subordinates it has in secret, the lizardmen decide that they must inform the Demon King immediately about the turn of events, especially since even just a smaller-sized spider is troublesome to deal with for one of them. As they ride back toward the castle, the leader of the lizardmen estimates that if they are up against 1,000 of them, then both the Demon King's territory and the Empire would suffer greatly. And with that, there are only a few days left until the day of the magical beast's subjugation. There are many other forces at play, such as Duke Ragus, and hopefully the main characters are ready to face them in the near future.
Thor tells Mabel to come along, saying it's finally time. Mabel responds with a nod while holding a stack of books. Thor says he hopes it goes well. Mabel replies that she would be happy if they recognize the item. A few hours ago, Mabel tells Thor that he has orders to stay behind at the castle. Thor nervously replies that he thinks so, then explains that with his combat ability at 0, he won't be very useful during the magic beast subjugation. He thinks to himself that, at best, he can only make adjustments to the magic items he's unveiling today. Mabel says that she thinks that's an important role too. Thor notes that Mabel says that to reassure him, but she's very different from the people of the Empire. So he is thinking about staying behind if something happens to Lady Lucy. He clenches his hand into a fist. Mabel brings up the Empire's actions during the magic beast subjugation, but Thor looks tense. He suddenly shouts, asking what she just said. He recalls his thoughts. That's right, he needs to get approval to ignore the order to stay behind, to follow Lady Lucy. A group of beastmen gather. Rookie says she's been waiting for Thor as they arrive at the hall where the meeting is held. She thanks everyone for gathering and introduces Thor as her alchemist who has made a new item and asks everyone to evaluate it. Thor thanks her and begins the explanation. He says what he brings today is a new material. Rookie is shocked to hear about the new material. Thor explains that while making a certain item, a new material is created. She asks if Thor means a new material is made during item production. He says yes, and he wants everyone to see if this material can be put to practical use. Rookie asks if it's the fabric on the table. Mabel then explains that it is fused with magic stones, called magic fabric. Kelv comments that she has never heard of that name before. Mabel says there are 4 pieces of magic fabric imbued with the attributes of earth, water, fire, and wind. Each piece exhibits effects in response to magic power. A minotaur pulls on the fabric, surprised that even with his strength, it doesn't tear. He notes that the earth attribute fabric is extremely durable. The lizard man holds a water attribute fabric, which is very smooth, and says it doesn't get stuck on their scales at all. He praises Thor, saying he has made something incredible. A dwarf holds another piece, stating that the wind attributes coolness would be good for cooking in hot weather, while the fire attributes heat retention would be perfect for cold winter work. He also notes it. He excitedly suggests making clothes with it. Thor watches as the others react with excitement. He notes that everyone seems to like it. It It feels good to know people are happy with his creations. He reflects that seeing the things he makes spread and change people's lives is the true joy of alchemy. He smiles gently. Mabel stands nearby, watching proudly. Suddenly, Rookie calls out, asking everyone to settle down. She says that the magic cloth created by Thor is indeed a wonderful thing, but it's naive to expect everyone to want to use it immediately, and notes how difficult it is to accept something new. Kelv agrees that they must give the villagers a chance to try it out, so she asks whether Thor has any ideas on how to implement it, and Thor wonders aloud if it can be used to defeat the demonic beasts. From what he hears, the monster's nest is in a hot place, as there's a volcano nearby. He suggests that if clothes are made with the wind element in them, it will be cooler for everyone. Rookie and Kelv comment that it makes sense, and that they think it's a good idea, so she will have the materials prepared and says to use those elements and instructs Thor to realize the idea. If successful, the result will be used to defeat the monsters. Thor then agrees, saying he understands. Rookie raises a matter of personal interest, asking if Thor has cloth with the attribute of darkness or light. Kelv insists even Lord Thor can't go that far. Rookie points out that Thor already creates fabrics of the 4 basic elements, and questions what's to stop him from making more. She directs their attention to the cloaks and asks if it's possible, encouraging them to look closely. Thor asks Mabel to assist in presenting the magical fabrics with the attributes of light and darkness, and she responds with eagerness. Mabel lifts the cloth and declares that this is the dark magic cloth. The viewers react with surprise. Kelv asks if it's a magic cloth with a dark attribute. Mabel confirms that when infused with mana, it absorbs light and turns black and opaque. Thor explains that it can be used as a curtain to block out light and would be perfect for night dwellers who need no light to sleep. He adds that the cloth only absorbs light on the surface while still allowing light to pass through the crevices. Rookie understands and asks about a fabric with a light attribute. Thor is silent for a moment, then says it is a failure. As he demonstrates, the cloth lets all the light in and becomes transparent, causing shock among them. He clarifies that the fabric doesn't block light at all. It just passes freely through it. He doesn't know where that would be useful, since it doesn't make the wearer invisible. Only the fabric itself is transparent. Despite the failure, Rookie reflects that while light and darkness might not seem practical, they might become useful when combined with the other 4 basic elements. Rookie smiles warmly, praising Thor's contributions to the Demon Lord's domain over and over. The audience cheers up, and Thor blushes with a touched feeling. He thanks her. She replies that it is a good presentation. Thor hesitates, but then announces that he actually has one more item for her. She is shocked and jokes if Thor is really that hardworking. It scares her. Thor turns to Kelv and asks for assistance. Kelv agrees, and Thor pulls out an object. He says it's nothing out of the ordinary, but still, it's a magic sword. The demons are shocked and wonder if it's the same kind of magic sword that even elves and dwarves together fail to replicate, or if it's like the one wielded by the first demon ruler. While another questions whether it's some kind of joke, Rookie asks if Thor really makes it. Thor, gripping the sword, confirms it is a magic sword. Thor bows slightly and addresses the demon lord, asking for a favor. She listens, and he requests to be allowed to accompany her on the upcoming monster campaign. The crowd reacts with surprise. Thor explains the expedition will use many magical items, and since he will need to customize them, his presence will be useful. Kelv notes that only Thor can customize the magic items, and if a lot of new cloth is needed, it would be better if Thor accompanies them. Rookie looks serious and responds that she is against it. She informs him that the demonic beast they must defeat is completely unexplored, and its reason for appearing is unknown. She has received an intelligence report stating they may face 1,000 of them. Assuming the worst case, their numbers are growing every day. That number is twice the size of their combined forces. The Demon Lord tells Thor they cannot guarantee his safety and instructs him to remain at the castle. Thor lowers his head slightly and recalls what Mabel tells him, that the Empire will use an item from the hero world, namely the sacred sword. She says that the letter from the Empire asks them to let the Demon Lord's subjects see the sacred sword that defeats demonic beasts. Thor looks up and asks if the Demon Lord knows about his dream. Rookie thinks back and clarifies, it is not a dream, but rather an ambition. She points out that Thor says he wants to surpass the objects of the hero world, and he also says one of his dreams is to create a sword that can rival the sacred sword. The crowd questions whether it is even possible to surpass the swords of heroes. If it's Thor, they want to see it. They then declare that it must be a magic sword that surpasses the sacred sword. Thor explains further, saying the sword is only a prototype, but one day he will exceed the sacred sword of this world. And to accomplish his ambition, he must see the sacred sword in action with his own eyes. So he asks the Demon Lord for permission again. Rookie considers silently and acknowledges that Thor is sent to the demon realm with the willingness to die. As a friend, she does not want to oppose Thor's heartfelt wish. But as a Demon Lord, she wonders what she should do. On one hand, she doesn't want to risk letting a good man go into danger. She is sure they could customize the magic items themselves. On the other hand, she doesn't want to deprive Thor of the inspiration for his legendary sword. She wonders whether he really wants to see the sacred sword that badly. Meanwhile, the crowd begins to chant that they want to see it. Everyone begins shouting the same word repeatedly toward the throne. She thinks that with everyone on Thor's side, as Lord, she cannot refuse. She looks down and thinks about Thor's aspirations. She affirms it is as she promises. Looking at Thor's passion and zeal, she can only accept those aspirations. She then announces that Thor the Alchemist is assigned to the logistics division. She raises her voice to command Thor to follow her as her court alchemist, departing in 3 days. Thor is shouting his thanks. Mabel calls out to Master Thor, smiling and saying she's glad it works out. Thor looks back and asks if she knows this would happen. Mabel tells him again that she's his assistant. He smiles softly and admits that he doesn't deserve her. Rookie happily thinks that Thor's eyes are glowing with happiness, the joy of his upcoming encounter with the sacred sword. She's very happy to see everyone supporting Thor and admits she is the one most worried about him. Inside the Empire, the atmosphere shifts with a weight of panic. A man apologizes to Thor's father, the Duke of Regis, because something unprecedented has happened. The Duke screams that there's no point in apologizing and asks if they have failed. If that's so, they are doomed. The man states that there is nothing he can do, and now the Demon Lord General will no longer negotiate with him. The Duke, sweating and trembling, recalls the plan he created and got approved by the Minister of War. He describes the Flame Lord as a powerful warrior who detests the weak and thought the plan involving Thor would be accepted. But to his confusion, it is rejected. The Duke is furious with the man he had chosen to be his future son-in-law. He wonders if Thor is just a victim. The general should be crushing him underfoot. So why? The man replies that he does not understand what exactly happened in the demonic domain. The Duke begins pacing, suspecting that perhaps the demons have a reason to protect Thor, or worse, that Thor has betrayed the Empire. He grits his teeth and calls Thor an unscrupulous bastard. Just then, someone bursts into the room in a panic. They shout that there's a problem. The angry man brushes him aside, saying he already knows and is thinking of a solution. The soldier insists, announcing that the Minister of War is here. The angry man turns pale. He stammers upon seeing the minister's presence. The Minister of War enters, stating he received word that the plan has failed. He's come to confirm it personally. The angry man stiffens as he's recognized. The narration explains that this man is one of the 3 highest imperial authorities, a mentor to the 3rd princess, trusted by the emperor, and of much higher rank than Duke Regas. The minister states he only came to talk. The Duke insists the plan hasn't materialized yet, calling it a slight miscalculation. He assures it will work soon. The minister cuts him off, saying the plan is cancelled. He adds that the Duke acted too rudely, even trying to eliminate his own son. That's out of line. The Duke panics, asking how the minister found out. The minister replies coldly. He had one of his men infiltrate the Duke's unit and file a report. He glares, stating their task is to prevent the Empire from making an enemy of the Demon Lord. The minister explains that sending the son as a hostage still served the initial purpose, maintaining relations with the Demon Lord, but the rest of the plan was altered. Charging his own son with a crime wasn't part of the original plan. The Duke trembles, trying to spin it. The minister coldly states the conversation would have ended neutrally if the general's rejection had been respected. He says the favor for a favor plan failed, but the monster hunt is still ongoing. It's a good chance to show the Empire's power. The Duke, desperate, asks to accompany him. The minister rejects the offer. He orders the Duke to act elsewhere. Next, the minister says there's a brewing conflict with a small country in the south. The Duke will fight alongside the army under the Ministry of Military Affairs. The Duke freezes, eyes wide in horror. The minister says he'll give more details at the High Council. The Duke begs for a chance to explain himself. The minister says he can speak at the meeting. The minister sternly says not to mention Thor again. Thor is now a forbidden topic in the council. It would be disrespectful to His Highness to even bring it up. The Duke asks why. The minister explains, Thor has gained the trust of one of the Demon Lord's strongest generals. He's even spoken of marriage. The Duke is speechless. The minister adds that Thor likely knows he was meant to be a scapegoat. Because of that, he must hate both the Empire and the Duke, so they are forced to abandon him. The minister says that with such connections, Thor could have been useful as a pawn. The Duke himself could have benefited, that the Duke didn't even think of that. But instead, the Duke insulted him and sent him to die. The Duke protests. Thor is useless, has no fighting skill. The minister questions how such a person earned the demon general's trust. The Duke insists it's natural for a nobleman to serve the Empire, even if he's not a warrior. The minister mocks the Duke's claim of noble ideals. The minister says the Empire needs the Demon Lord to stop focusing on the scandal. The minister suggests the Duke should be willing to give up his title for the Empire's sake. Finally, the minister turns and says they'll continue this at the High Council. He asks the Duke to accompany him. The Duke trembles uncontrollably, unable to form a coherent response. Thor's father sits stiffly, eyes wide, muttering to himself that this is how his legend ends. His expression is hollow as the carriage rattles forward under the sunlit forest. He stares through the bars and questions if this is truly the end. He shakes his head. Not yet. No. He imagines Thor glowing like a saint, insisting they merely had a misunderstanding. Wouldn't he want help from his father? Reconciliation? He raises his voice as if speaking to himself or to some imagined audience. Thor's father begins rationalizing aloud. Sons love their fathers, don't they? This must be nothing more than a father-son quarrel. Claiming it was for his sake that Thor flattered the general and the others. Why else would someone like Thor try so hard? Clenching his fist, he mutters that if they had only exchanged letters once, none of this would have happened. He declares to the minister that if Thor had wanted to come back, it was possible. The minister looks confused, asking what he means. Thor's father continues, eyes burning, shouting that Thor was rated D by the Demon Lord, so he did his job as a spy. They should write to Thor and expose him as a loyal dog of the Empire. The minister stares silently, wondering if this man is still trying to justify himself. But after a moment, he begins to think it through. He murmurs to himself that if he sends a letter to Thor Regas, he might be able to plant seeds of doubt in the Demon Lord. The other official, now resolute, announces that they should get to it. In the capital of the Empire of Dolgaria, the Emperor sits in a throne room. He addresses his daughter. She kneels, responding respectfully to her father's call. Third Princess, Liana, answers, "Yes, Your Majesty." The Emperor continues, "A new kind of monster has appeared on the demon borderlands, specifically a giant spider monster. He states that negotiations with the demons have been unsuccessful. They must show strength through battle. Let them remember that Dolgaria is an empire of heroes, strong enough to defeat even the Demon Lord." Liana bows her head, replying that she understands. The Emperor praises her spirit and tells her she should take that strength into battle. He instructs her to use a weapon, the sacred sword of Dolgaria, once wielded by heroes from another world, to demonstrate the power of the Empire in the Demon Lord's land. Liana looks at the sword solemnly. She smiles proudly, declaring it a great honor to be chosen as the guardian of the great sacred sword. She introduces herself as Liana, third princess of Dolgaria, and says she will show everyone the second coming of the heroes of another world. She vows to let the blessing and light of the heroes become the strength of the Empire. The Emperor agrees. That's right. Before departing, Liana is asked if there's anything she would like. She requests to see her twin, Sophia. The Emperor allows it. Liana thanks him. Her expression softens. She whispers that she'll join Sophia in a minute. Sophia smiles happily. Sophia, sitting nearby, greets her calmly, saying she has been looking forward to meeting her. Sophia softly calls Liana the Princess of the Sacred Sword. Liana flinches, blushing deeply, and tells her to stop it. She stammers that she feels embarrassed when called that. Sophia asks if it's okay that Liana is here. Liana asks if there's a ceremony at the palace today. Sophia replies that the ceremony is already over and says she can't tell her the details. Liana responds she doesn't care as long as Sophia is healthy. Sophia repeats her words. She doesn't care as long as Liana is healthy. Sophia then says she will make some tea. Liana panics and tells her not to let the maids do it. Sophia smiles as she pours tea herself. Sophia quietly says that now that Liana is here, she wants to do her best. She claims she's already started. Liana calls out to her gently, saying, "Sister." Sophia glances down. She says if Liana were strong enough, she would have been the princess of the sacred sword, not Sophia. She adds that physical strength is one of Liana's strengths. Liana looks conflicted. Sophia claims that her magical power of light is nowhere near as strong as Liana's. She then says Liana would be able to use the sword more successfully than she could. She says she's not strong enough to handle the sacred sword. She adds that if she had it, it would be a waste of treasure. Sophia says she's content with her position. She reflects that if she had been born a commoner, she would have been sent to war. Or if born a common noble, she would have been sent to another country as a hostage. Liana responds, surprised, asking, "What? Hostage to another country?" Sophia confirms it and brings up that she heard Duke Regis's son was sent to the demons like that. Sophia believes it was punishment for not restoring the magic sword well. That time, Sophia continues, saying she was told half the sword was restored by some drifter who was never found. She says Liana can come here before and after she does her job, right? She then asks if Liana has figured it out yet. She then praises Liana as a great sister. Sophia tells her she has some advice for her. She then casts a barrier spell around them, slamming her hand on the ground with magical force. Liana is shocked. She says now no one outside can overhear them, exclaiming that Sophia shouldn't use magic for something small like that. It would harm her body. Sophia assures her that she's fine and tells her not to worry. Liana worries that Sophia might have a fever, touching her forehead and feeling the heat. Sophia calmly asks her to listen. Sophia explains that even if Liana and the sword have great power, the world is a big place. She warns that Liana may meet unimaginably powerful opponents she cannot defeat. Liana asks if she's referring to the Demon Lord of the North. Sophia nods and says yes. The sister continues by explaining that they do not know demons very well, so Liana must stay on guard. However, the princess does not understand why. She is powerful and believes she should be able to demonstrate the Empire's strength. The sensible Sophia suggests they try to understand the demons instead of intimidating them with force. This surprises her sister. Liana bows her head in shame, realizing she never knew how much her sister worries about her. Then she promises with a smile to remember Sophia's words. Sophia responds by emphasizing honesty as one of a princess's virtues, along with childlike spontaneity and a certain sensuality, which she says might one day save her sister. The mention of sensuality confuses Liana. Still, Sophia, visibly concerned, warns her to be cautious. Someone might take advantage of her honesty. Lost in thought, the princess notes that Sophia always speaks her mind. Her sister affirms this, saying it is very important. Liana understands this, like a passport to understanding. The twin takes this to heart, though with some concern. Then she hears footsteps and ends her magic spell. It is the maid, whom she asks if there is anything to report. The maid replies that the Minister of War has arrived to see Her Highness. Suddenly, the man steps in front of the maid, startling her. Zagran apologizes to Liana and Sophia and explains he has additional orders from the Emperor. It turns out the princess is to gather her troops at the Ministry of War and proceed immediately to the Demon Lord's territory. The girl is excited by the urgency of the command. However, the minister stresses this is a direct order from His Majesty. Sophia urges Liana to be careful. Zagran glares at the girl disapprovingly. She turns to face him, ready to defend her sister. The minister coldly replies that this matter does not concern Sophia. He advises her to remain calm and stay here until it is her time to act. Her Highness begins to protest the rude treatment of her twin, but the man interrupts, making it clear that time is short. A crowd of knights gathers behind them. Then, in a stern tone, Zagran reminds Liana of her desire to be the perfect princess. That brings the girl to her senses, and she obeys. Sophia watches this with alarm. The fighters are ready. Her Highness walks forward with determination. Meanwhile, in the Demon Lord's domain, the party preparing to defeat the Hexambus monster travels along the southern route. Their destination, the mountainous terrain to the south. Thor peers out of the carriage, observing the trail of carts and people. The squad consists of Minotaur infantry and elven mages, followed by the support group's wagons carrying food, weapons, and armor. The protagonist wants to transport everything using a so-called compact storage unit, but Mr. Kelv refuses. His reasoning is to bolster the soldiers' confidence. If they replaced piles of supplies with a single mysterious box, it might unsettle the demons. Thor hopes everything goes smoothly. Then he notices the maid in front of him. Mabel, with a focused expression, clasps her hands as if in prayer. Thor tries to distract her with a smile, saying they'll handle their part of the work together. The girl brightens and enthusiastically vows to protect her master, even at the cost of her life. He begins to protest, but the assistant asks him not to say such things. This surprises the alchemist. Mabel, with deep feeling, declares that Thor is important to her, to his majesty, and to all their lands. Thor thanks Mabel, silently acknowledging that he feels the same. With a battle-ready stance, the girl then insists that Thor should leave everything to her. He laughs, explaining that Rookie needs to inspect the magic sword from the safest place possible, so he's confident things will go well. Mabel promises to secure a good spot. Suddenly, the master hears something and calls Mabel over to check. The Imperial troops, as Thor notes, have already arrived. A few days later, the Demon Lord's army reaches the rendezvous point with the Empire's forces. 2 muscular Minotaurs guard the Overlord's tent. His Majesty decides to rest here before meeting with the Imperial representatives. He turns to those present, Kelv, the Elven and Minotaur commanders, Mabel, and Thor, thanks them for their service. Meanwhile, General Gargaros and his lizard troops scout the Hexenbius nest. Through a telescope, the general watches the monster's behavior, ready to fight if it advances. Just then, the Demon Lord notices something unexpected. The Chancellor and the commanders agree with His Majesty's concerns. No one expected the tent's canopy to be so comfortable. Thor smiles, noting that the wind-infused fabric offers a breeze even in still weather. Their clothes and undergarments, also made from the same fabric, prevent sweat buildup and keep them cool. An eared figure appears in the tent's opening and apologizes for the intrusion. The Catgirl drops to one knee and announces that all supplies have been delivered. She asks them to verify everything. The Overlord nods, gesturing for Mabel and Thor to follow. Their guide leads them to a dark tent, activates her mana, and reveals the barrels and crates inside, surprising everyone. She confirms they have ample food for many days. His Majesty smiles and notes that even the seemingly useless light attribute fabric, which the alchemist once thought transparent and impractical, has proven valuable. The girl then turns to Kelv, who darkly asks what's going on. The Catgirl begins to explain something about the new tents, but the Chancellor cuts her off, calling them convenient. She tries to speak again, hesitantly agreeing, but still seems anxious. Kelv suddenly demands if she doubts their beauty. She doesn't answer, simply affirming his words. He then orders her to show what's inside the bales. She rushes to comply, activating her mana to make the dark fabric transparent, revealing food. She demonstrates that everything is fully stocked. Kelv notes how convenient it is. The girl nods, and the Chancellor asks whether the Lord knows about it. The Overlord thinks for a moment, then turns to Thor and asks if everything is fine. The young man wonders why Kelv is looking at him. Kelv sighs. It will be hard to manage the troops' confusion. The Overlord reminds everyone that the Chancellor already anticipated this. Turning to their guide, he orders the issue resolved and leaves. The Demon Lord then holds a small meeting. Before facing the Imperials, he wants to brief his allies on the mission. His Majesty elaborates on their target, the demonic beast Garguros. He explains that the creature reproduces rapidly, leading to hundreds of additional monsters. The population grows daily. While the demons can potentially win without the Empire's help, Rookie believes that going it alone would endanger their soldiers unnecessarily. She intends to proceed with extreme caution and avoid any casualties. Clenching her fist, she declares her decision. The demons will join the Empire in launching a full-scale offensive to exterminate the spiders. The group receives this with solemn understanding. Kelv remarks that this marks the first time both nations act in unity. A successful operation could foster lasting diplomacy, and the liberated minds would benefit demonkind through trade. He outlines the strategy. Scouts report that Hexenbeast and the spiders occupy the mountainside, with smaller spiders scattered through the web. Direct engagement would be too dangerous, so they plan to lure the creatures out. The general's troops will ignite the threads. Thor's storerooms contain the flames prepared for burning the web. The Demon Lord believes this should be enough to handle the threads. Kelv continues, the elven troops will launch the first magical volley. Ordinarily, their limited range would require them to get dangerously close, but now they have laser pointers. This innovation allows the elves to remain safe behind infantry lines, attacking from a distance. The infantry, minotaurs equipped with health-enhancing pendants, will be at the front. These pendants allow them to generate water mana. By transforming this mana, they wield water power strong enough to counteract the fire used by the general's troops. The Overlord continues for the Chancellor, saying they will ease their task by inflicting as much initial damage as possible with flames. After the bombardment, the lizard squads observe the area and finish off any escaped spiders. Then, His Majesty concludes the meeting. To Thor's bewilderment, everyone turns to look at him. The commanders of the Minotaurs and Elves express doubt that they have everything they need. The group is uneasy. Everything seems to be going too well, and it scares them. Thor feels embarrassed by the attention. However, the Demon Lord reminds them to remain vigilant, as anything can happen in battle. Despite the reinforcements, he warns that carelessness may still lead to failure. The assembled commanders take this seriously and eagerly promise to stay cautious. His Majesty then approaches the Chancellor about strengthening cooperation with the Empire. With concern, the Chancellor apologizes. There is still no news from the Allied Guard. This surprises the monarch. Kelv explains that while greetings were exchanged, the Imperials haven't yet shared their own plans, despite being briefed on the demon's strategy. The ruler finds this baffling. The alchemists reflect that the Empire likely can't be trusted. They anticipate this behavior and send scouts ahead before arriving. Thor suspects the Imperial Guard will act independently, assuming the enemy is weak and disregarding verbal agreements. Just then, someone bursts into the tent with urgent news. A lizard man confirms Thor's suspicions. The Empire's soldiers have already engaged the demonic creatures. The scout continues, explaining that they provoked Gargarosa and the small spiders, herding them toward a rocky outcrop at the cliff's base. He ends his report by asking the Demon Lord for further instructions. Earlier, the Minister of Military Affairs had spoken with the Imperial Guard. Zagran remarks that defeating monsters in the Demon Lord's territory offers a rare opportunity to display the Empire's strength. He urges the soldiers to act with responsibility, and they agree loudly. Admiringly, the man then invites Her Majesty to speak. The princess charmingly thanks them for their efforts, noting they must be tired since it's still a long way to the volcano, and quite hot here. But the soldiers loudly insist they are full of energy. Liana is perplexed. She herself is sweating under her armor. She silently longs to return home and see her sister. But Zagran's stern gaze snaps her back to the moment, and she continues. The princess announces that Gargarosa has already spotted them and is approaching. She raises her sacred sword, calling on the garrison to defeat the monster and prove that demons and non-humans are no match for them. With fervor, she declares that vanquishing evil is the mission of heroes' successors. While the crowd cheers, Her Majesty and Zagran discuss their numbers. They have about 300 elite guards, more than enough. The Demon Lord's forces number only about 100. The minister notes that with 3 times the manpower, they should be able to defeat the monsters without outside help, proving their superiority. He then turns to the princess, asking if she remembers the action plan. She confirms that the soldiers will restrict the small spider's movement, while she strikes the Hexen Beast with the legendary weapon. Zagran adds that once the giant falls, the remaining spiders can be easily dispatched. He also reminds Liana to monitor her mana. She responds irritably that she already knows. Still, the minister warns her again. The Holy Blade requires immense mana and can only be used briefly. He urges her to pace herself. The princess snaps that he doesn't need to repeat himself. She won't embarrass herself in front of the Demon Lord. Zagran glares and reminds her that she must also uphold her image in front of the troops. His look unsettles her. Liana sighs deeply. The thought passes through her mind, she must be the perfect princess for all to see, brave like a hero and cold as an emperor. She closes her eyes in exhaustion. When she opens them, she forces a grin. Just then, the soldiers spot the incoming enemy. Zagran confirms that they've successfully lured them out, but something alarms him. There are far more monsters than expected. The spiders charge toward the troops like an avalanche, mouths wide and eyes glowing with chaos. The creatures surge forward in a disordered torrent. The minister attempts to count them, but the numbers are overwhelming. They're multiplying at a terrifying pace, exactly as one would expect from a true demonic beast. Remembering the Demon Lord's warning letter, Zagran curses under his breath, but raising his hand, he decides there are still ways to counter the threat. At his signal, the drums begin to thunder, and the soldiers form a shield wall. Spears point outward. The minister reassures himself, this is just a mindless horde. They have strategy, formations, and discipline. The guardsmen brace to strike. Meanwhile, Zagran fixates on a single thought. They must win. The monsters charge, teeth bared. The first wave slams into the shield wall, which barely holds. Zagran orders the archers. A storm of arrows rains down on the spiders, piercing and wounding many. With his raised axe as the signal, the Imperials thrust their spears into the demonic swarm. By Zagran's next command, the magicians act. Channeling their spells, they summon fire. A blazing fireball crashes into the battlefield, cloaking it in smoke. Flames consume scores of enemies, though many continue charging. Zagran announces that the enemy's momentum is slowing and commands the cavalry to cut a path toward the giant spider. With a shout, the cavalry surges forward, swords drawn. Their blades cleave through the monstrous ranks. As they near Hexenbeast, Zagran turns to Her Majesty, telling her the moment has come to strike the primary beast. Standing tall in her chariot, Liana holds the sacred sword and responds with resolve. Leaning into the weapon, she asks for its strength. The sacred sword of Dolgeria glows in answer. Watching the battlefield, Zagran admires the army's order and adaptability. His glasses reflect the chaos below. He thinks, all that remains is to unleash the legendary weapon and end this nightmare. Yet the spider's six-eyed glare unnerves him. The monster lets out a furious roar, a deafening, soul-rattling cry that echoes across the plain. The warriors tremble to their very bones, but they keep moving forward. The monster's hunger intensifies, and it roars again, even louder. Zagran stands at the center of the terrified troops, overwhelmed by the realization that the beast's roar alone can shatter the Empire's momentum. But he shakes the thought off and takes a firm stance. He orders the cavalry to press on. The knights respond with confidence. Yet before they can fully absorb the command, something large and fast charges toward them. In a blur, the monster's massive limb lashes out, severing the heads of all who dare approach. Zagran is horrified. He realizes they must pull back. He turns to warn Her Highness not to leave the line, but he's too late. Liana charges forward in her chariot, racing past him. He shouts her name in shock. She draws her sword, ready to confront the threat. Her instincts scream that now is the time. Through the chaos, her eyes lock onto the clear path leading straight to the beast. Bodies lie scattered around her, limbs torn and broken. She vows to avenge them. A wall of giant spiders races toward her. Dropping to one knee, she braces for impact. Zagran panics and orders the troops to shield Her Highness. The formation responds immediately. The infantry guards the rear while the mages ready their spells to strike the main force. The monster closes in, but Liana doesn't flinch. With immense strength, she swings the sacred sword of Dolgeria, a legacy of ancient heroes aiming to crush her foe. The knights watch in stunned silence, their faces twisted with horror and dread. The monstrous horde presses in, led by a titanic specimen, birthing more spiders by the second. Liana's heart sinks. The largest beast spawns additional horrors from within. Still, she doesn't falter. She must destroy it. Failure means the end of everything. She lunges forward, slipping beneath the massive spider and lifting her sword. She casts a spell, channeling the sacred blade's light. A radiant beam shoots forth, striking the monster's side and scorching its flesh. The beast screams, a terrifying guttural cry. Her Highness watches intently. Something feels off about its reaction. Then a devastating blow hits her. Her chariot explodes into splinters. She leaps away just in time, heart racing. Panic sets in. Smaller spiders distract her, and she misses her chance to finish the beast. Gripping the sword tightly, she feels her hands tremble. Then comes the realization her mana is gone. Her strength has vanished. The man looks at the wounded monster, reflecting on the fact that the Holy Sword strike doesn't kill it, it only leaves a serious injury. Holding his hand to the side, he signals the magical squad to initiate a fire attack. An explosion follows. The order is executed flawlessly. He stares intently into the swirling fire and smoke. The monster stands there, unharmed. The blast dissipates his eyes. Such a powerful strike fails to even wound the beast. He begins to wonder if perhaps only Her Highness's blow can truly harm the spider. But something at the flank draws his attention. The defensive line is starting to collapse. Spiders, now multiplying rapidly, continue their relentless advance. Above all, the priority is to rescue Her Highness and regroup. The Imperial Guard manages to hold off the first wave. Despite being outnumbered, the guards retain the tactical edge. If they can once again break the enemy's front, they might shift the fight into a battle of attrition. Destroying the bulk of the spiders could effectively decapitate the invasion force. He starts to believe victory is within reach, until a strange sound interrupts. A deep rumble rolls across the field. The man scans the surroundings, confused, trying to locate its source. A knight climbs atop a cart and reports that reinforcements are arriving for the enemy. Panic flares inside the commander. An enemy army appears on the horizon. At a glance, it matches or even exceeds the size of the first force. He is stunned. How could the enemy have hidden so many troops in ambush? The realization hits him hard. They've been tricked. Rage boils within him. Knights rush to inform the minister that they are now completely surrounded. At once, the troops are ordered to tighten formation. Spiders pour in from every side, enclosing the warriors in a deadly trap. Anxiety spreads. No one knows what's happening. Some knights estimate the enemy's numbers, perhaps 300, maybe 500. Regardless, they are vastly outnumbered, and it shows. Fear grips the soldiers. A single grim thought unites them. They are nothing but prey to these monsters. And that is the end of the manga for now. Please don't forget to like and subscribe my channel. Thank you for watching.